Hey everyone, I'm Trent Kusters, co-founder and studio director at League of Geeks, and this is the Game Maker's Notebook. Today I'm chatting with Johan Pilestedt. He's the Chief Creative Officer of Arrowhead Game Studios and was game director on Helldivers 1 and 2. This episode is a two-parter. So in the first part, we talk about the early days of Arrowhead. We talk about Johan getting into games, his time modding, his time meeting the first folks who would become the Arrowhead team as student developers and getting their start on Magicka, their first game. So finding their feet as an indie game developer and the astronomical success that came from that and setting up a business for the first time in their home country of Sweden. Cut forward to a month and a half later where we are now, and Johan sitting in Sweden and myself in Melbourne. We reflect on his wins at the DICE Awards, and then we start talking about the two games that bridged the gap from Magicka to Helldivers 2. We talk about how that informed how they lead the studio moving forward, some missteps there, some successes, and then we talk about Helldivers 1. We talk about how they came up with the seed of the idea for what would become a huge franchise and success for PlayStation and Arrowhead Game Studios. Obviously, astronomically successful title last year. What does it mean to create a Helldiver? How did it even come about? Where did that seed of brilliance come from? Where was the first snippets of excellence in that game design? And a little bit about the development too. And then we quickly move into Helldivers 2. We talk about the storied 7-year, 11-month, and 26 days of game development on that title. And then that's not even counting all of the post-launch support that they've had since the game has been incredibly successful. There's a lot in here, whether you're a Helldivers fan, whether you're a game developer, you're an indie studio head, or you're on the publishing side. We talk a lot about their relationship with PlayStation. Like I said, it's a long episode, but I enjoyed it immensely. Johan and I could have spoke for another 3 or 4 hours easily. And I only hope that you enjoy the conversation as much as we enjoyed having it. So without further ado, here it is.
The Federation of Super-Earth, keeping managed democracy safe with the lives of our heroes, protecting freedom from tyranny with the gentle touch of an iron fist. But liberty's enemies march ever closer. Together, we must take back control of freedom.
Together for managed democracy!
Together for victory!
Together for liberty!
Together for liberty!
Together, they fight for freedom. Will you? Enlist in the galaxy's elite fighting force. Work together to protect your future. Dispense peace with the ultimate weaponry. Become a legend. Join the Helldivers, the galaxy's last line of offense. Available now.
PlayStation.
Johan, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Welcome to DICE.
Thank you.
This isn't your first DICE. You've been before?
Now that I said thank you 2 times in a row, I kind of felt the urge to say thank you a third time today.
Let's do it.
Answer a question by saying thank you.
Brilliant podcast where just every response is thank you.
Yeah. So this is my second time at DICE. Cool. Last time was Helldivers 1. We were nominated for Action Game of the Year back then, and the Handheld Game of the Year, which we won.
Yeah.
So I hope this time around that we're gonna be able to bag the action game of the year. But who knows? Otherwise, I'll have 2 nominated for flags at home.
No wins, right?
Yeah, exactly.
What are you nominated for tonight?
6 categories. So it's audio design, music. You should never list things, right? Because you always
you miss some. Yeah, just give me a few. Yeah, give me the top hits.
Yeah, exactly. This list is going to be 5 long. It's 6 categories, but it's outstanding achievement in game design, which is the one that I care most about.
Yeah, exactly. That's you.
Yeah, exactly.
You and the team. Yeah,
and game of the year, of course, and then we have online, and then there's one more.
Cool. I love it. The mystery award. It will be announced on the night. Yeah, mystery 6 nomination.
I'll get surprised. Maybe we win that one.
I also love the fact that you come to DICE just to do the victory laps as well. It's like every game. So we'll see you again for Helldivers 3 or the next project victory lap of nominations.
Yeah, exactly. No, I'm in the middle of the sabbatical now that I've so wisely chosen to take. So, but when I decided I was going to go on the sabbatical, me and Shams talked it over, and I told him, it's like, well, I'll absolutely, I need to go. I need to take some time off, but I still really need to go to some things.
Yeah,
BAFTA, DICE, and so forth.
Yeah, hell yeah, yeah. It's a great night. The DICE Awards are so much fun. I'm glad you're here.
Thank you.
Okay, so we got a ton to talk about. I'm really excited. Obviously, we'll talk about the sabbatical. We'll talk about Shams, right? That's amazing. Shams coming in as CEO. But let's take it all the way back to the start to young Johan and tell me that moment where video games lit up your brain and sort of put you on a trajectory to like spend your life, right? Investing in them. Yeah. Okay, do you have any like earliest memories with video games?
Yeah, several. Which is strange because when I started thinking about like what's my first recollection of video games, there's like 3 or 4 instances, and I don't know which one is true. So, but the one that I like to, talk about,
the canonical
one, is that in maybe when I was 5 or 6 or something like that. So that would have been 89, 90. Yeah. My dad got me a Nintendo, massive, like so. Love that thing and played it so hard. But the funny thing about it is that Dad got it, and we were having Christmas with celebrating Christmas with my mom's cousin and her husband, and my dad and Sture, whose his name is, just started playing, and I wasn't allowed to play. they were playing the shit out of it, so I was just sitting there and. Because they got annoyed by me as trying to jump in Mario by yanking the controller.
Yeah, classic.
Yeah, it's brilliant with the Wii, with the motion controls, that actually worked.
I haven't watched a kid play video games like recently. Like maybe I'm not sure if you have kids, but you might. But like, does that still happen? Like, are kids jerking around all over the place while they're playing Fortnite? Because I remember,
it's like because they're playing on their phone, so I don't know. It seems kind of impractical.
Yeah, it's kind of counterproductive to keeping your eyes on the screen. I remember my brother falling off the top bunk because we were playing Super Mario World, and he jerked around that hard, like trying to jump water, and fell to the floor off the top bunk.
Falling off things when playing video games, I think that's peak video games.
Yeah, that's it. It was a different time. It was dangerous activity back then. Games.
I remember my friend actually fell off the chair playing the original Alien vs. Predator. When they had the jump scare face hugger, he just launched out of the chair and just hit his head on one of the tables at home. It's crazy times.
Oh, we love
it. I think that kind of love of video games it was threefold maybe, and again back to listing things. So one thing, of course, was just the realization of these kind of digital worlds. What the potential of being somewhere else and exploring a place or being somebody else. That kind of escapism was something that really captured my imagination. It's like I know that before that I was, as all kids, really into space and dinosaurs.
Yeah,
and
it's classics.
Like, and it's the two things like that you'll never ever be able to in your life, we will never be able to see a dinosaur.
Yeah, but they're both real, right? It's interesting. They're both real things, but like we'll never see a dinosaur,
and we'll never
go to space. Probably, yeah, exactly, yeah.
But in video games, you can, and I think that's sort of the reason why I got so taken by video games is that it allows us to experience things that are so far beyond what the normal world is able to offer. And I remember having this sort of, there's probably a German word for it, that kind of sorrow of everything being known.
Yeah, okay.
If you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So I was looking at a world map, or I remember a distinct conversation with my mom. We were looking at a globe of the Earth. And there's so many stories where you have, like, the adventurers going into the unknown, discovering new places. But being a 90s kid, most of everything was already known.
Yeah.
Like, there's no, of course, the deep sea, but all land has already been discovered.
Yeah.
There are no unknowns sort of on Earth. And I think that kind of sort of, when that became apparent to me as a kid, I felt that kind of feeling of like, I want that sense of mystery still.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that was an integral part of why I fell in love with video games. The second part to that was that mom's cousin's husband, Sture, he and I really bonded over playing Zelda. So he lived in a different city, so I had to do long distance calls to just get the latest hints on, like, how do I find this cave, or like, how do I defeat Ganon on the second playthrough, and how do you find the cave, where do you need to plant the bombs, and so forth. So we had that kind of, it was a fundamentally social experience of playing video games back then. I mean, internet wasn't, you couldn't go online and find the answer.
Yeah, I almost bankrupted our family by calling the Nintendo helpline when I had Zelda. Right? I didn't have a mum's cousin husband to just call and ask. It was the Nintendo hotline at like $1 or $5 a minute or something.
Yeah.
And if you're looking for that key in the water temple, they can't explain it in a minute as well. So
no, right. So like
you're on the phone for a good 10.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. It's like water temples. It's like it's a curse. Like any water level.
Water level, water temple. Yeah, just.
I think that's why I have a little bit of fear of water.
Like, it's just transferred directly to the real world.
It's like from a mountain town, and then never really having proper experience with oceans, and then also having horrible memories from playing Zelda and water temples.
I love it. Makes sense. It checks out.
Yeah. So I guess my list of 3 is actually that list of 2. It's like the sense of doing something that we can't do and solving that problem. And then the second component is that kind of deeply social element.
It's amazing because, we've been, chatting about your GDC talk as you're preparing to, present it at GDC this year. And it sort of mirrors so much of the Helldivers stuff that we've been talking about there. But interestingly, I'm keen to hear then from that. So it's captured you, like, these worlds and everything, obviously, as a gamer. At what point did you start interacting with video games, like as a hobbyist thing, or programming, or actually making games, modding them, whatever? And sort of, when did that sort of reveal itself as like, oh, this could be actually a job? And
yeah, it was actually pretty early. So just a couple of years after, maybe 2 years, around when I was 8, 9 maybe, I remember my mom used to work in the library, so she used to borrow like books and magazines from the library for us to read. And she brought home a book about computer graphics.
Oh, okay.
And that issue of computer graphics was just how 3D software works. I mean, it was early days, of course. And in particular, there was the center spread was about how to make dinosaurs in 3D. It's like right
Very
on the money.
cool.
And that I think that's where it really clicked for me. It's like, oh,
do think the Venn diagram of like video games and then dinosaurs. So let's go. Yeah.
So I can't remember when this was. It must have been 93, 94 maybe.
Yeah. Okay. So you're like 8 or 9 or something.
Yeah. So it was just around the time of Jurassic Park.
Yeah. God, yeah. It's all making sense. It's all falling into place.
And I think at that point, like I was, regular computer user at that time. My dad was really an early adopter of a lot of technology, worked in IT to some degree, and then he changed him into cars. Running a car dealership. but I remember downloading like 3D Studio Max,
Mm-hmm.
like one of the earlier versions,
Mhm.
pirated, of course. Sorry, Autodesk. And just trying to figure out how does this work. And it was such an mind-blowing experience of actually being able to create whatever in that. And I think to some degree it was helped by, the relationship with my brother. We used to, record movies, and we wanted to do special effects, so we added lightsabers to just forward sticks, and then frame by frame painted lightsabers into it, and I got like a 4-second sequence after
Awesome.
painting lightsabers for 100 frames.
Yeah.
It's like, wow, that's so cool. But that it's that kind of act of creation, I think is so rewarding, especially when you do it together with other people. Because it's that kind of, you feed off the other person's optimism and desire to just be creative. And I think we started like modding games. The timelines are a little bit fussy here, but started making maps for Doom, for Quake, Duke Nukem, and eventually Half-Life. But that was 98 or something. But it was me, my brother, and a couple of friends that we sort of made a map and then played it online, or just showed it to each other. So there's some, so everything is a little bit fussy here. But there's one thing that really made me realize that you could get into modding before that. So it's like map making was one thing.
Yes,
it's like you had map editors and whatnot. But the first time when I realized that modding is such an interesting way into actually unleashing full creativity is a friend of mine back in the day. His dad had downloaded the Aliens Total Conversion for Doom.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Which was, I was a massive Aliens fan. I accidentally watched it when I was like 8 or 9 or something. And after that, I was obsessed and really, really afraid of
Yeah, it's
aliens.
funny how much kids, like I was the same as a kid, like being like things that are scary are actually so like alluring as well. Yeah. It's like, I remember we went to the video store one day and we got this film. It was like a chimp, like with a suit on the cover, and it was called Link. And I was like, "Whoa, this looks awesome!" And we put it on. And when we got home, my parents realized it was like a horror film, actually. Yeah. And I was like, "Oh, what?" And we thought it was a family film, so we did something else for family video night. But then, like the next day, I like snuck it and watched this film, basically where this chimp just kills everyone. This pet chimp, and I was like, it was like some magical object that I just could not stay away from. Like they could have put it under lock and key and I would have like busted in there and watched that film. As soon as I learned it was a horror film,
Yeah. How are you with zoos these days?
With zoos? Yeah. I'm okay. It's actually, funnily enough, my thing is, okay, so I'm actually going to go completely off script for this podcast and just give a quick anecdote on this, because my fear is witches. Like even as an adult, I had night terrors as an adult as witches, and they started off nightmares as a kid, like Scooby-Doo style witches, green with the wart on the nose and everything, and then as an adult they turned it into this like really hectic, like existential anxiety, like dread, like I wouldn't even see the witch in the end. It was just like this presence of a witch that would be overwearing, and I'd wake up in like cold sweats and be like, what the fuck is going on? Yeah. Anyway, the reason why I am like that is because when I was a child and I was first scared of witches, my father, instead of saying, "Don't worry, witches don't exist," he said, "Don't worry, come over here." And he would show me next to his bed. He had this big steel pipe and he's like, "See that? That's my witch whacking pole." And I'd be like, "There's a witch outside." And then he'd go outside of the house by the back window and be like, make these noises, bang the pole against us. And he'd be like, and he'd like actually one time put green paint on the ground. It was like, "See, I got the witch, it's fine." Had a can of what I now realize is Brute deodorant, but he made a label that said witch spray on it. And so every night in my room, he would spray witch spray in the room to get rid of the witches. So he just cemented this idea that witches are real and gave me this lifelong fear and night terrors as an adult.
And that you need to have a weapon by your bed to fend off witches.
All because he just wanted to be the hero of my life, right? Yeah. Anyway, so yeah.
A little bit of trauma builds character.
Yeah, exactly. I think so too. Yeah. So it's not zoos, it's witches, but I appreciate you asking.
So I think aliens is an interesting topic for me. And I mean, you can see that in Helldivers. I mean, the clear references there as well. 8 years old, I think, went over to to that same friend whose dad had downloaded the Aliens Total Conversion for Doom. They were having a movie night, he and his wife.
Mm-hmm.
And for some reason, he was like super laid back. So it's like they were going to watch Aliens.
Mm-hmm.
And they were like, well, let's make some popcorn. The kids sat down in front of the TV. I mean, I was 8. This friend of mine, it was actually my brother's friend. And he's 2 years younger. He was 6 years old.
Right. I love it.
So we're sitting there in front of the TV and I'm watching it. And I can't just take my eyes off it.
Mm.
And in retrospect, the movie that I watched at that point is not at all. The recollections of several scenes that terrified me don't actually exist in the Aliens movie,
Right.
which is crazy. It's like I have this distinct memory of the xenomorphs just crawling en masse through an air duct.
Mm.
But there's no such scene. I mean, there's
Things
scenes,
like it, but yeah, your mind made it this massive, like an exaggerated and
so
massive.
when I close my eyes, I can't see it clearly even to this day. And I mean, how that's 32 years ago.
Yeah, and I think we definitely have a habit of doing that as humans, like, you know, in our younger years. Because I remember going back to Zelda Ocarina of Time, which was my favorite game. And, you know, I finished it like 8 times when I was a kid. Around, you know, we're a similar age. So it came out when I was around 13, 14 or something like that, right? And I get it. And I played a bunch of times. And then I go back to it as an adult. Probably the first time I revisited it, I was like 25 or something like that. And it was so tiny, you know, in regards to like when you get into the world and the scope. And didn't have, but in my mind, Palace, as like the experience as a child, it felt like something similar to The Witcher 3 or something. Now, you know, it was much more. So it makes sense, right? That you're picturing these xenomorphs in mass through the ducts.
Yeah, and I wonder if it's worth revisiting the things that you loved as a child, because to some degree, the memory of them
may be superior.
Yeah. And it's tricky, but at the same time, you want to sort of get that reality check of realizing that, well, it's rose-tinted glasses and nostalgia.
Yeah. So it was an Aliens Doom full conversion. That was the first time you were like, oh shit, there's something here. Modding is a thing. More
exactly,
just
because I had never really considered I mean, when you're that young, things just exist. Yeah. Right? There's no, I mean, now I realize that the reason why Aliens exists is because chimpanzees travel out of Africa.
Yeah.
Right?
It's like
it's the butterfly effect of civilization, and everything has a cause and effect in a massive branching tree. But at that point, it was like, things just exist. I had no thought on where anything came from.
Yeah, or the motifs behind it and all that.
Yeah, so everything was just static to some degree. And of course, I mean, you don't have that perception of time as a young person. But once I realized that total conversion is like, right, so they took Doom, which is a super scary game, which we also, you know, same dad. Yeah, it's like, we were in his like the house in the yard, and he had he had a computer. He worked for a software company or hardware company. Can't remember. Yeah, and he had a computer there where we played Doom as like 8 years old.
Just traumatizing the whole village. I love it.
Yeah, kind of. It's like super crazy when I start thinking about it. It's like. Yeah, but but there is another element as well. So Aliens, of course, had such a profound effect on me in also being able to show a world that doesn't exist, like space travel in that level, and also aliens. Yeah, and another just tick that box of dinosaur space and aliens.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, and it really made me like almost obsessed around what it would be like to face off something that's that terrible. And I think the xenomorph and dinosaurs have something in common in that, like, what's the scariest thing and scariest animal on Earth? And of course, it's humans. but really, it's like a tiger or a lion or something like that. Probably, maybe a polar bear. But it's also like a little bit disappointed by that. Yeah. Like as a kid, you want dragons or chimeras or
we can do better. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, exactly. No, I guess it's just unfortunately, it's just because of the perspective that we have, that the things that we already have. If we had xenomorphs as wildlife on Earth, we would go like, I wish there was something more scary than a xenomorph.
Xenomorph, yeah,
it's like it's just a regular xenomorph.
Yeah, I would see him at the zoo. Yeah.
Exactly. There's a petting zoo for xenomorphs.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. No, and I think there's so many influences. You know, a lot of people, when you start sort of trying to break down what makes somebody build video games, there's so many things that fall into place and so many influences that impact that kind of decision making. I had a massive love for Warhammer around the same time, like 8 to 10 to 12 years old. Like Warhammer 40K, loved and still love that IP. Played so much role-playing games, tabletop role-playing games. The Swedish version of Dungeons and Dragons called Dragons and Demons, but in Swedish.
It's like bootleg D&D.
Yeah, it's kind of bootleg.
Okay,
but
right,
I don't want to say that it's bootleg, but yeah, it's pretty much bootleg. It's like
we got it. Yeah.
We have Dungeons and Dragons at home. But yeah, it's but it was, I think, adjusted a little bit to the Swedish sort of culture, a little bit more folklore.
Right.
Because I mean, there's Sweden as a country has you can't tell by just going to Sweden and look at a society like that, but there's so much folklore from you know, the Viking ages that still persists today. Where you know there's the regular monsters in Swedish culture is like the forest wraiths. Everything's nature based. It's like trolls, John Bauer style. And,
those Celtic style like pagan religions and stuff.
Exactly. So, but anywho, like my cousins, they were big into both tabletop role-playing games and miniature games. And I think that's also like miniature games is also the act of creating. Like it's creating and playing and then making stories, making make-believe together with other people. And my cousin, he was a really good game master. And I was always like excited to hear sort of the stories that he would tell. And we had so many laughs together. Like I remember like getting on my bike, biking over to his place, and then playing role-playing games. It felt like through the entire night, but as a kid, it's probably until like
hours,
10, it's 3 hours, one game night. Felt like an eternity. But from that, I started DMing as well, because I was so inspired by what his sort of showcasing us being allowed to take part in his imagination. So I wanted to do the
collaborative
same thing.
Storytelling. Yeah,
exactly. So I think all of these things came together. So like wanting to tell stories and specifically make stories for others, because I saw it as him giving me a gift.
Yes.
So I wanted also to give a gift to somebody else for them to be entertained.
Yeah.
So a lot of it, no matter if it was playing like 40K or playing role-playing games, the goal was never, like, I've never been a competitive gamer. I always just try to make the best experience for whoever I'm playing with. Like, I want them to have a really good time.
Yeah.
It's kind of same reason as like when you cook a good meal for somebody and they
I love cooking. That's the same. Like, it's one of my ways, definitely, that I show my love. Like, a dinner party with friends, sharing food together and laying out a big spread. It's just so much fun.
Yeah. No, it's and especially like, it's a question of like, are there any selfless acts, or is everything selfless? That age-old philosophical.
Yeah, exactly.
And I struggle a bit with that. It's like, sure, I want to do good for other people, but I sort of feel good when I do good for other people. So therefore, it's not good. and now I come to the realization, it's like, no, I'm addicted to making other people happy.
Yeah, that's good. And it can still be good, even if it's for you too, right? Like, it can be what do you call it? Like a chaotic good or an unlawful good.
Well, yeah, exactly. And if we want to find the answer, we just have to go back 2,000 years to Greek. Ask one of the philosophers.
So you've now realized that like modding is a thing. You're DMing and stuff like that as well. You're actually, so I'm imagining you then took part in the modding scene, right?
Yeah,
and everything. Yeah. And so did you have any stints in video games before Arrowhead, like professionally, or did it just go? So tell me about, let's just quickly spend like 10 minutes or something talking about the modding before we get to Arrowhead and like that little period.
Yeah, for sure. So around after Half-Life was released, that's sort of when I really got into modding. So, and that became like a newfound passion, especially because of the collaborative nature of it. So maybe it was Quake. It was just Quake Half-Life, because I remember somebody was working on a 40K mod for Quake.
Oh, cool.
Which was like, I was once again like mind blown. It's like, I really need to play this game. But it's like modders back in that day, they had this sort of idea of like sort of mimicking the games industry.
Mm-hmm.
So they had closed beta tests and whatnot.
Okay,
so
right.
you couldn't just download the mod because it wasn't done yet. So I was like, how can I play this? So at that point it was IRC, the forums, and I'm like, if I just apply myself, maybe I can get into contact with these people, and maybe if they're benevolent, they'll let me in as a tester or something.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe a level designer or whatnot. So I just started badgering them for just talking to them, chatting them up, and eventually they're like, yeah, you want to take part in this weekend's beta test? And they're of course based in America or somewhere, and it's like late night America, which is not late night in Europe. So it's like I stayed up all night waiting for the beta test start, and then I connected to them with a 56K modem. So it's like I had 700 ping or something like that. But I was like, oh, this is going to be so amazing, and it was kind of fun. Like, I can't remember who made that mod. But after that, it's like, I was like, so I can actually join mod teams, because then I became a regular tester, gave feedback, hosted tests in my friends group with that as well. And then after a while, it's like, but I want to do more than just play it. I want to start building, because whenever I saw some decisions, I was like, I don't feel like that's right.
Yeah.
Like, I think it should be a little bit different. And then I started, either starting mod projects and, gathering together a couple of people online to just build something, or alternatively, just joining mod teams. I think during those days, I was probably part of 20 or 25 mod teams, which is, I think, one of the best lessons that I ever learned in game development.
Yeah. So you'd be in a few at any given time, right?
Yeah, exactly. Okay. So making maps, making 3D models. So it's like, just had this sort of yes man attitude.
Yeah.
It's like somebody's like, oh, we need a weapon model for this gun or something. Like, I can probably whip that together.
Yeah, okay,
it's
cool.
like I couldn't, but
figure it out.
But it's like it eventually got better and better. And like my level design skills, they were so. Like I lost interest in level design, just because it takes so much work to finish a full level.
Yeah, the iterations and everything. Yeah.
But my heart was really in core mechanics, but you needed to be able to code. And I couldn't code. So it's like trying to dabble a little bit, but managed to learn that way later. But I think the lesson learned from those kind of 20-25 mod projects that I was part of is that I think all but 3 failed.
Wow.
And the reason why they failed is something that I took with me. It's teams that didn't collaborate, teams that didn't move fast forward, and weren't result-oriented, to speak in corpo terms. But really, the desire to play the game, play the next iteration of the game, is what set game teams that succeeded apart from the games that failed. The games that failed, a lot of good people that had like really good ideas, nice people, terrific people, the best people. But they were in it for just noodling around and modding, but the ones that succeeded, they wanted to play the finished product.
Yeah. It's like, would you say that they were sort of like, again, corpo speak, but like they were sort of product oriented, or they just actually wanted the thing finished so they could play it themselves?
It's just that passion for wanting to play seeing their vision realized.
Yeah, completing the project and being able to engage with it in that form. Yeah. Right.
And then, one of them that actually succeeded, that at first it was fun to see how this shifted. So it's a mod that I was part of that was going nowhere. So everybody was just finagling and doodling and doing stuff, and there was no proper direction. And then they changed who was responsible for the mod project. So the guy that started it, he sort of was a little bit on and off.
Mhm.
And then another guy that really wanted to make it happen stepped into that role and basically took over the project. And that really drastically changed the outcome of it.
Yeah, wow.
And managed to actually make it into something that was shippable.
Mm.
I quit earlier than that, but I followed them and I was a tester for a very long time.
Oh, great.
And that was Day of Defeat.
Oh, wow. There you go.
Yeah.
I love the name drop at the end is so good. Like, it's great. Yeah, Day of Defeat. Because that was going to be one of my next questions is like, what are some of these mods? Are there some that stand out that you worked on that might?
So the one that I worked the most on was a mod called Frontline Force.
Mm-hmm.
So Frontline Force was created by a guy called Adrian Final, who's now at Valve. Really cool guy, but he really what this game was is, the original announcement trailer for Team Fortress 2,
mm-hmm.
which was that military style gameplay that they dropped like 5 clips of. And everybody was like, "Oh, it's going to be amazing! Team Fortress 2 with Robin Walker, in sort of military style in the Half-Life engine. It's like going to be the best thing ever." And I was obsessed with that game. So Frontline Force was basically trying to beat Team Fortress 2, that version of Team Fortress 2, to market in Half-Life, which is a bizarre thing to do.
Just racing them to market.
Yeah, and it was a fun game. It's like 3 classes, light, medium, and heavy, or recon, assault, and some support, I think was the names of them. Where you had, it's a team, 2 teams versus each other, where you had a proximity effect. Like if we were up to 3 squad members in close proximity to each other, we got certain buffs. Like we were moved a little bit faster. Had suppression, so whenever you get shot, you got a bigger spread. But if you had other people around you, that effect would be reduced.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of cool concepts that were in that, and spent a ton of time, making levels, making models, and all kinds of stuff for that game.
Yeah. And so, like, then, so you've done a bunch of modding. So tell me about the inception of Arrowhead. So was it folks that you'd work with in the modding crew? Like, how did that sort of idea come about to go, you know what, let's make this actually like a commercial thing? And sort of, how old were you around the time as well?
Yeah, so after high school, which high school is
You're talking about it's gymnasium for you, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's gymnasium for us. It always freaks me out. It's like high school seems like you're.
There's no Americans here. Josh, what's the top, like the last part of high school in America? What's it called? Is it elementary's earlier? What's the last one? Before college, yeah.
Senior.
Amazing. Thank you, Josh.
After high school, because to me, high school is what is it called, middle school or
junior high. Or
junior high,
like that. Oh, we're getting it. Cool. We're getting the nods from the producer. Yep.
Yeah. So to me, it sounds wonky to say or strange to say that after high school, I of course like a lot of Swedes did conscription.
Yeah. Right. Okay.
Right. For a little bit more than half a year, 2/3 of a year. And after that, it was time to apply to college, and to do a full loop back to getting that Nintendo. That guy that I talked about, Sture, he was a technical professor, and he worked in the education, and he saw the need from us playing video games that game development as a career is going to be a thing.
Yeah.
So he worked together with one of the universities in his hometown to create a game development masters. So I applied to
he's
that.
just like teeing you up, like he's laying down the tracks in front of you as you're moving through life.
Something like that. So I applied to that, got in, and then in college, like those first 3 years, it's 3 years of like, I don't know what the actual, like the English term would be, but it's like a
bachelor or something.
Yeah, a bachelor in computer science with like a specialization into video games.
Great.
So,
and that's amazing because I mean, I know that in the UK and the Nordics there were like games courses long before they were in Australia and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And especially ones of like really considerable note. So it's early days for, like you say, some of the first time right in Sweden. It sounds like there was one going on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like I think my passion for modding sort of started to wane, sort of just around the same time as conscription, sort of because when you're in conscription in Sweden, you're of course in the military on all week, nights, and then maybe the weekends as well.
Right. Okay.
So at that point, it's kind of hard to be reliable as a teammate on a mod project.
For the country, very reliable.
Yeah.
For a modding team, not so much.
So at that point, it's sort of like, and also like the Frontline Force team had broken up because Adrian, of course, got a job at Valve, and so everybody sort of scattered. It sort of fizzled apart at that point, and this was 2003. Yeah, 2003.
Did they hire him so that you didn't beat them to launch? Was that their like like cut the head off the leader and the troops scatter into the wind?
Something like that. Yeah. No, I think Valve was really impressed by the work done on Frontline Force.
Yeah, and they got such a long history of like hiring from modding teams and everything.
And it's such a brilliant thing. It's like the people. It's like the perfect job interview, right?
Yeah.
You've already worked in the tools, you worked on the engine, you built a project of your own desire with no pay.
Yeah.
It's like, do you also want to get paid and keep doing the exact same thing? It's like,
exactly.
Yes, please.
Yeah. And funnily enough, like it's a Team Fortress mod, but Team Fortress is the mod itself, right? And Robin and the crew were hired out of Australia and went across. Also, side note, Robin's a massive Aliens fan as well.
Yeah.
There you go. It's in the blood for all of us game developers,
exactly.
right? Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, Team Fortress 2 is Team Fortress Classic as well. Such a good game, and also like so innovative for its time. But anywho, so during college, growing up as a kid, all my life was just about video games, constant video games. And then when I got to college, it's a lot of partying and a lot of just hanging out with friends and doing normal college stuff. And so a lot of that took like a front seat. So I sort of, in between, courses in college and then hanging out with friends and partying and whatnot, I sort of started falling out of love to some degree with game making, since I'd been doing it ish for like 10 years already.
Yep.
And for 3 years, I was considering like, do you really want to make video games? Is that my calling in life? Like I had to start rethinking it.
Part of being a game developer, a successful one, as well as actually having that period in your life for sure as well. Like, do I want to do this? Oh my God. Yeah. Is this right? Yeah.
So, and I was so into college, like I had such a good time, like learned a lot of, other practical skills. Like I ran the bar in college. Like we had, it's so strange. So we had like, the student union had a bar. So the student union appointed something that was called like sexmästare. Sexa is an old Swedish word for party.
Right.
So but when you say you're a sex master, it's like that's
it sounds very much like college campus culture. Do you have fraternities and stuff like that over there?
Yeah, sort of.
They have them in some parts of like Northern Europe and stuff as well.
Yeah.
We don't have them in Australia.
No, it's not a fraternity in the same sense as the American fraternities. Yeah. It's more of a they're called a corps, like a military corps.
Oh, right.
Corps.
That's badass.
Yeah. And they were earlier based on different regions in Sweden. So you have like the Uppsala Nation is one of them, more like what's technolog? Science.
Science. Yeah, we'll take it.
Technologist.
Yeah. Okay.
Core, or so it's either by region or by what you're studying and so forth. And they're a fraternity in the sense that there's a lot of partying and there's a lot of culture and there's a lot of tradition within them, but they're also the representation of it's almost like a student union.
Yeah.
So it's both a party vessel and
Yeah.
a student union.
Little union body.
And that's why, like, you had the fraternity sort of board that dealt with, you know, pretty serious things as, you know, misconduct by teachers or whatever it might be, and also ran the bar. so you appointed somebody that ran the bar. So I did that for a couple, for I don't know, maybe a year or so, but learned a lot of, like, you know, interesting skills in just organization. From that time, you know, setting up a schedule, calling people, can you work tonight, and that kind of stuff. And then later I moved up to sort of be the chairman of that kind of
Union, the core,
fraternity, the core. So it's just like I went 100% into like that kind of college role, college kid, and after 3 years, I mean, I botched my studies hard. I was partying too much and so forth, and
you're running the bar. It was bound to happen. I don't think probably anyone who's run the bar didn't like graduate that college or whatever. Right?
Exactly. I was just too busy having a good time. But at least I learned to code and make some hobby projects and whatnot with friends, and met a lot of really good people. So, and after that, like, I wasn't done with the college, so I applied for a second master's, which was in computer graphics, because I was like, I really want to get my skills in modeling, 3D modeling and texturing and whatnot, animation up.
Right, so it was an art course as opposed to like a computing 3D graphics. Right? Yeah, cool. Yep.
So got into that, and we're really excited. It's like, yeah, finally, it's going to do this, and it's like, you know, a lot of traditional art and stuff like that. The first year, like, I got in, was really happy about that, and after like maybe 4 months, I was like, I'm done with college. Immediately, I was done with college. That's enough college for me. I needed 3 years and 4 months.
What am I doing?
Yeah. And I think it was that kind of traditional art that sort of made me realize that what I really want to do is make video games.
Yeah.
So me and one of my college bros were sitting we saw that as a competition called Swedish Game Awards was coming to town to present sort of the competition, and it was a competition for students in Sweden, where it was basically an indie development competition. Make the best indie game and get a cash prize and get some recognition. So I was sitting next to ML, who happens to be one of the founders of Arrowhead. And we're like looking at each other, and I asked him, it's like, should we do this? It's like, let's make a video game.
Yeah, hell yeah.
And he's like, yeah, he's like, I don't know how. I'm like, I know.
Yeah, I'll show you. Yeah.
It's like, I have some experience in this, but I mean, never from scratch, like, as in, you know,
not modding something, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
when you mod something, you're like standing on the shoulders of giants, like you have
on the shoulders of Valve.
Yeah, exactly. Valve specifically as well.
Yeah,
and also like the Half-Life engine is id.
Yes, as well.
Right?
So they're
it's
shouldering on this.
That's then improved by Valve. So it's like didn't really realize
it's just giants on top of giants on top of giants. Yeah,
exactly. So, but let's start from scratch. So I was like after that we got really pumped up, and it's like, yeah, we gotta start building this game, but we need more people. Like, we need somebody that's really good at programming. And as luck would have it, I since I did my computer course, I knew some really good programmers.
Of course,
started talking to them, like some people that are either have already graduated or that were still around, or just one class below me.
Yeah.
So they were still in school or doing their third year or whatnot in college. So I think we managed to get 8 people together that were really excited.
Wow. Yeah, cool.
Of which 4 are still with the company.
Incredible.
Yeah. So we had our WizKid engineer Anton, who's just brilliant coder all together, and he's had that kind of experience of, you know, growing up just coding and just being tech savvy. His dad was really tech savvy as well, and so forth. They're brilliant kid. And then Malin, who's like really solid, you know, traditional artist, but also had a lot of historical knowledge.
Yeah.
Like did a lot of, you know, sort of the equivalent to the US audience would be like a Ren Fair. But in Sweden, it's more like ultra traditionalist in that it's historical reenactment, more like it. So together, and then we had other people that were from just student pals that got together. I think when we then sat down, it's like, okay, what kind of game are we going to make? And it's like, well, let's make something that's inspired by Zelda. Like that was the first thing that we went to, is like something Zelda-esque. But also, like, we were really into Lord of the Rings. Like the movies had, I mean, relatively recently dropped. And it's like, we love that scene in Moria with, the cave troll and everything. It's like, but what if it's a local co-op game, because they don't make local co-op games anymore. And it's 4 wizards. And it's kind of Zelda perspective, and you cast spells. And then Emil, he had sort of like this desire to make, he's like, maybe we could have, spells that you have to like do circle movements, like Naruto was also really big at the time. It's like, the ninja techniques. It's like, what if we could emulate the sort of the emotion of doing hand gestures with a controller? I'm like, that's such a good idea. Let's go for that. But let's also just give people the building blocks of the different spells that they're casting. So it's like, if you want to cast steam, you have to combine water and fire, to make steam. And it's like, is that doable? I'm like, I mean, it's super simple, right? It's just it's
code, man. We can do anything.
Yeah, exactly. Which is one of the brilliant things with games. Like, you can do anything. What is that quote? As long as it's not prohibited by the laws of physics, it's possible.
And even then, you can kind of cheat a little bit.
Exactly.
In games
quantum mechanics
too,
and stuff.
Smooth the edges off that.
So we really got into to building this game, and to the point where, like, all of us just stopped caring about college. It's like,
again, you're like, apathy towards college has infected 7 other people. I love it.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I think it was 5 of us that really stood out. So that really went for it. So it's the 4 people that are still with the company. And then we had one other guy who came up with Vlad the Vampire, this vampire that was obviously a vampire, but told everybody that he wasn't. But also always slipped up. So it's like, I'm gonna suck your no, wait. Come closer, I won't bite. It's like, right. Come closer, I won't bite. Hard. It's like this.
Characters.
It's fun.
So this game that you're getting towards, like, for people, so some people may have played this game but not realize that it's from the same studio that did Helldivers, right? Because they've just come along at the end.
Yeah.
And the one that you're getting towards, right? This is Magicka, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And so you won the competition, I'm guessing, right?
Yeah, exactly. So they had 3 categories. They had Game of the Year, Innovation, and Execution.
Yeah.
So we're absolutely going to win Innovation. Execution, probably not. And Game of the Year, it's probably not. So we had the Orvar from as the conference what's it called,
the MC or something, the compere. Yeah.
Well, the announcer, who's famous in Sweden. He's like a celebrity metal singer.
Oh, right. Okay. Cool.
Have you ever heard the band Entombed?
Yeah, I've heard of Entombed.
So he was in Entombed, but he loves video games. So cool. he was presenting the show. So I was like starstruck. It's like,
it's so Scandinavian to have like a metal singer like announcing the awards ceremony. I love it.
Super cool. But so he went when we're sitting there in the audience of at Swedish Game Awards, really hoping that we'll win. Of course, like, we were super excited when we got the nomination. It's like, oh, this is going to be amazing. And then Innovation goes to another game, and we're like, fuck, we're so mad, we're fuming. And it's like, we didn't care about, like, we were, it's sort of that feeling of, our entire world is collapsing, you're all dazed,
defeated.
And then we weren't even paying attention to Game of the Year. And then when they announced the winner, it's like, and the winner for Game of the Year is Magicka. It's like, it's like everybody went up because we were so fucking mad.
Your whole party got rezzed.
Yeah, exactly. And then we had the, like, summoning sickness, all of us. So we were standing there on stage, just like, all woozy. And there's like this wonderful picture online of us being like the 8 of us, like kids, just holding like plaques and whatnot. We were so sure that we were gonna win innovation that we had bought cigars prematurely. And it's like, well, if we don't win, it will have to be like a grave cigar or something. Yeah. But so crazy times. And by chance, like the jury of Swedish Game Awards was 4 people from the games industry.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So it was Jens Andersson from now Machine Games, who was the design director of Indiana Jones.
Fantastic.
Who became sort of a mentor to me after that. When it comes to game development and game design. And then we had Oskar Burman, who was the COO of Avalanche. Mm-hmm. Tobias Sjögren, who was an agency, the DDM or something, I can't remember. And I think there was one more. Yeah, Johan something, Forsell or something from Microsoft. Mm-hmm. So it's like really like people that actually knew what they were talking about. So they came up to us after that, and we got a little bit starstruck because we played a lot of their games. And they're like, they just gave us one recommendation. It's like, okay, great that you won this, but don't see this as the end. This is the first step.
Yeah.
Now you just gotta get to it and make this a reality.
Yeah.
Like we won like maybe it was $5,000 or something.
Yeah, that's enough to start a company.
Good amount of money for students.
Yeah.
Like we were living out of $720 every month, so 5,000 would go a long way. So, of course, the first thing that happened is that we were kind of like we crunched hard, so everybody sort of went back to college again, and that became sort of like a stark realization. We're sitting there after with that victory, and it was like let's sort of do college and game studio at the same time.
Yeah.
So like that's a bad idea. So we started seeing like progress on making the game just slow down and everything just grounded to a halt. And I got the flashbacks to those mod projects that failed.
Yeah,
I was like, this is exactly it. This is failed project waiting to happen.
Yeah,
because we are not in it to achieve something. We didn't have a goal. So we're like, we have to force ourselves to have a goal.
Yeah.
So I told I went to the rest of the team and said, like, guys, this doesn't work. Mm-hmm. We have to make a decision now. We have to drop out of college or abandon this game.
Yeah.
And of those 8 people, 4 came with. So it's Malin, Anton, Emil. And me.
Yep.
Right.
It's like, you're like, the lists again, man. We got to stop fooling around with these lists.
I don't know why I start listing things. It's like, I suck at it. And then we got another guy that joined the team as well, and who was a good friend of ours that studied, music production.
Yeah.
But he had some similar skills in like, finance and administration and so forth, which he didn't get to do. He got the script because we needed more developers and we didn't need somebody that had, did the business thing. But anywho, so I think we needed a second opinion. So we went to the dean of the college and we asked him, it's like, hey, so we got this opportunity and this is going on. And it's like, we're kind of thinking of maybe not continuing college. And he's like, such a great guy. He's like, college will always exist.
Yeah.
This is once in a lifetime opportunity.
Yeah. Wow. Great advice. Yeah.
Do it. And that, I think that we needed that permission.
Yeah.
From somebody that was in an adult role, even though we're, I don't know, 25 or something, 23, 20, I don't know how old we were. And at that point, it's like, okay, let's drop out of college. And, everybody we talked to, I was expecting heavy resistance from everybody, like from parents and everybody, but everybody was just like, yeah, go for it.
Yeah.
It's like I was really surprised by sort of the support that we got during those times. So we got like the college even gave us a room. It's like the size of this table almost for 5 people to sit in.
You're together. You're actually now founding this company, right? And you've got Magicka there as this student project, effectively, that's won this award. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, the biggest hurdle at that point, and this has been the story of Arrowhead for 16 years, is like we didn't have money.
Yeah.
It's like that. That has been. If I could just summarize Arrowhead, is like we needed money. So, but we had a plan. So we had a really strong plan. So there was a grant called Nordic Game. Or Nordic Game had a grant, if I remember correctly. You could get up to $60,000.
Yeah.
And it's like, that will cover it. That will cover development for us. And especially with our perfectly laid production plan, nothing would go wrong. We would make a great demo. We would submit it. We would get $60,000, and then we would be able to finish the game. We would get rich, and then we could make games without worrying about money.
The indie dream.
Yeah.
And and what year was this now that we were talking about?
This is 2008.
Yeah, so it's also happening all around us as well, like at that time. You know, the indies that are breaking through, getting onto storefronts, because the saturation wasn't a thing at all then.
Exactly.
If you had a decent game like Magicka, you did have that cut through, right? Yeah.
So it was.
So you're not crazy, essentially, having these thoughts. Yeah.
No. It's the time of Braid. It's the time of Castle Crashers.
Yeah, Gone Home, all these different things.
So many good titles that came out during during that time, and it's also a time much like today where you had stagnancy in the industry.
Yeah,
it's like everything had converged to a focal point where everything was about accessibility and to get as many people to play games as possible.
Yeah,
and each game. So every game was for everybody, which meant that every game was for nobody, which is incidentally also the slogan of the subtitle of Arrowhead. Game for everyone is a game for no one. Yeah. And I think our ambition with Magicka and in those days, it was a counter reaction to the games industry. We didn't feel like we as gamers got the games that we wanted to play.
Yeah.
We wanted to play something that was a little bit like challenging, just pure fun, like laugh out loud fun, and something that didn't hold our hands, like where we could fail. And we had this thought that like and also games that allowed you to do things.
Yeah.
Right, guardrails off, or actually guardrails on the level of the Death Star.
Right.
It's like,
we want the pits that we can fall into.
Yeah, exactly. Why don't I have Empire? No guardrails. It's like, yeah, well, it's a galaxy far, far away. So I guess there's no guardrails.
Yeah, totally.
They forgot to invent that part. But yeah, let's see, where was I going?
We're talking about Magicka, the team together.
Oh yeah. So we submitted like our application to get those $6,000. Of course, didn't get it because we were an unproven team, hadn't done anything, and who instead got it was Josef Fares.
Oh right! Yeah. Wow. Okay.
For some reason to make some game, and he was a celebrity movie director in Sweden. So of course he got the money. It's like it's like safer bet than like 5 college kids that well, not college kids anymore that dropped out of college.
Yeah. College dropouts.
Dropouts. Yeah, and it's like Sweden is crazy in that sense. Like we get paid to go to college. I'm tax. It's like. You get a grant. Everybody gets paid education. Yeah, and really, the way that works is that education is free, but you also get some living costs covered.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
So you get like $300 a month, and then you can get a student loan that's a low interest, 0.5% loan or something like that.
Because you are a student, so you just have access to financing.
But that's limited to. An additional, or was during our time, like an additional $420. So it came to like $720 total. So, but the way that the Swedish school system, the Swedish system works is that if you fail your courses, you get a letter saying like you failed courses. Therefore, if you don't correct this, you will not get the money. That money.
Yeah.
Right. So, what we did was that. When we dropped out of college, we didn't, tell anybody. We just stopped going to classes.
Just walked off base. Yeah, okay.
And then we, of course, got zero, didn't complete any courses. So we got a letter saying like, hey, if you don't fix this, we'll take your money away from you in 3 to 6 months' time.
Right. Okay,
so it's like, oh, yeah. And then...
so you're looking down the barrel of going back to school, basically. Yeah.
And then, well, no, really, we were, there's just plans. Like, let's just accept that, and because really what we got is 6 months of runway to start to as.
Right, you knew. Okay, interesting.
So it's just
all right,
to begin the system.
Yeah.
So and then eventually like six months down the line after we developed Magicka. And that was actually like we needed the money from that 6 months out to just be able to survive. So we started hoarding that cash that we got as a tuition or whatever. I don't know what to call it. Yeah. It's called, in Swedish, it's called studiebidrag.
It's like a grant or like like a student welfare sort of thing.
Yeah.
Yep.
So 3 months in, first letter, it's like, you have to fix this.
Yep, right on schedule.
Yeah, yep. It's like, fine. And then submitted it to Nordic Game for getting approval. Waited to hear back from that. Got a no, and then got a final letter from them saying like, well, now we're actually going to stop payments to you because you haven't completed your courses, even though you didn't redeem your failure. Yeah. And then there's a potential to get a third experience, and or a third
stream of income.
Yeah. Sorry, my brain is starting to go a little bit mush.
Yeah. It's the Vegas air conditioning. Don't worry, it gets us all.
Smells of perfume. But and that we call it to write a snyftbrev. Write a sad letter. So it's like, oh, but I've gone through such a hard time, and this is the reason why, and blah blah blah. So you write.
It's very effective. That's what I do when women break up with me.
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
the same thing. Yeah.
So you write the saddest story that you can come up with on why they need to extend it for an additional 3 months, and give you yet another chance to rectify your mistake. Yeah. Unfortunately, they were like onto us. Like, no.
That's it. It's like, they're reading the Magicka forums, right? They know what's going on.
Pretty much. So we were like in a really tough spot at that point. It's like we developed the game for 6 months. We knew that we had at least 6 months left on development, and we were out of cash. Yeah. It's like we got a small grant of like, I think it was maybe it's an additional $5,000 or somewhere around there that could keep us a little bit afloat. But we're like, let's use this as emergency money, and let's just, let's start being smart. Let's start eating way cheap. Yeah, it's like noodles and meatballs. It's like pasta and meatballs every day, same thing. Yeah, it's like the shittiest meatballs ever. And then eventually we couldn't afford that, so it was just pasta and hard bread,
dry pasta.
Yeah, it was like crazy times.
And so where's this sort of game at this point? Like,
it's like a vertical slice, playable.
Okay, cool. Now you're just like needing the money to close out the content and finish it.
Well, ish. But half the game wasn't built, half of the systems weren't built, or a third, maybe, 2/3 maybe. But so we're like, okay, we're really running out of money. We need money. And at that point, Paradox came out with a new initiative called, I can't remember really what it was called, but it was basically an indie publishing.
Like Arc? Paradox Arc? Was that it?
It was way back. It was called something like Game something.
Cool.
Fred announced it in, I guess it must have been 2009.
Yeah, cool.
And it's like, well, I guess, like, let's
give it a shot.
Let's see if we can get this signed. So we spent some of that money, flew down to Stockholm to meet with Paradox and meet with Fred. And he's like, but we were asking for $120,000 at the time to finish the game. And we thought, like, let's really jank this up. And it's like $120,000, more money than we've ever seen. And we had poorly laid out business plans and everything like that. Mm-hmm. And demo that was so. Let's see here. Fred was immediately like $120,000, and for a company to spend $120,000 on a small game that may or may not make it, it's like the easiest business decision ever. But we were like really nervous about this, and we were like, but got the promise that we'd sign it with them. We went back super ecstatic. It's like, this is going to be amazing. Yeah. But that's not the way that game development business works. It's like we were waiting for the agreement, and we got promised by one of the guys over at Paradox, the agreement's coming. We are going to sign. Going to sign.
Shams. Classic Shams.
Well, this was actually before Shams.
Yeah, I know.
It was, I'm not going to name names. And of course, it was a tricky situation for Paradox, as I come to realize in retrospect. But for us, it was like we were active. It's like a strategy game when you're in the negative and you see your cash reserve just
you're
dwindling.
Like about to find out what's below pasta without meatballs, right? It's like, what could possibly be below that?
Exactly.
Yeah.
social welfare and welfare. But anywho, so we were like getting really frustrated. Like we were working on the game, but it was hard to get even a reply to an email.
Yeah.
And for us, it was every single day I sent an email. It's like, hey, what's going on? Hey, what's going on? Can we sign? Can we sign? Can we sign? And then after a while, it's like, okay, we need to do something. This is clearly not working. It's like, what is that? The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. So we're like, what are we going to do? And it's like, let's announce the game. Let's announce the game, because that should hopefully make them
Let's
react.
smoke them out. Yeah.
So we put together a trailer in a generic fantasy world.
Yep.
Only up to 4 wizards had the power to save it. Something like that. Good fun, like, really amateur stuff at the time. But there was something that really resonated with players, and we uploaded it to game trailers, sent out press releases. So we took, I can't remember which company, maybe it was EA or Activision or somebody, one of their press releases, and we just rewrote.
Remove Lord of the Rings and then just put like
Magicka, and that is like the quote from executive, and it's like quote from me saying something. And it's like, and let's send this to all game outlets. So Robin, who's the administrative business guy, he has got a lot of the hunted down every game journalist he could find and got their email address. And then just had like this email prepared with BCC on everybody, and then just the statement, the press release, and it was ready to hit send as we uploaded the video. And as the video was uploaded, it's like send. And 24 hours later, that video had like over 1 million views.
Wow!
On game trailers.
Oh my god, that's
which was
wild.
Crazy. So
I knew you were going to say a big number, but I didn't think it would be like that.
No, it's like
crazy.
from
one
nothing.
day.
And the day after, like, I got an immediate call from Paradox. It's like,
like,
hey, do you feel ready to sign?
And you're like, I have altered the deal. Pray I do not alter it.
And I wish that I had, because that would have been a smart idea. But at that point, we were running so low on cash. We couldn't even pay an attorney to read through the agreement. We didn't have enough money.
Sure, it's fine, I'm sure. Like,
it wasn't fine. It was probably one of the worst game development deals ever signed.
Well, it's funny how we wander into that stuff when we're younger and everything, and like even just like you say, but like looking back in retrospect about like the situation Paradox was in and everything, you don't even have the perspective at that point in in the industry and in your career to understand, like, to place yourself in their shoes, like, really effectively.
Yeah, no, I had no idea.
Kind of deal. Yeah, of course.
And for me, it's like Paradox. They've done games, and therefore they should have them a lot of money. But Paradox at the time, they were just getting started with the publishing business and everything like that.
New and
so we signed with them, and then the next thing started. It's like first milestone payment. It's like, hey, we need. I think it was $12,000 that was going to be paid to us on a certain date. We're checking the bank accounts. It's like nothing. And it's like the day after, nothing. Started sending emails to Fred and to the other people. It's like, hey, where's the money? And no reply. It's like, hey, where's the money? Like we're still running. We had signed an agreement, but we didn't receive any money. And it's like, okay, what the hell is going on? And later I learned that Paradox was the money that they were going to get from one of their distributors was withheld from them.
Yeah, so it's just going down the chain. Exactly.
Right? I thought they just had the money on a bank account. But of course, you want to move the money. It needs to circulate.
Yeah, they're not just being jerks because they're jerks. It's like business. It's money coming down the chain, and you're at the bottom of it, unfortunately.
So they were involved in like a lawsuit in New York or something like that. And it's like, it's crazy.
Yeah. You're just like, I just need my meatballs, man. Let's go.
Yeah, exactly. I just need $12,000 so I can get some meatballs.
Yeah. Okay.
But Magicka development was it was chaos. Like we didn't know what we were doing. Like we knew sort of how to build a game. Like that wasn't a big problem.
But how to ship a game is a different thing.
Yeah, it's like just finishing up everything. All of the levels that we need to build, all of those. Everything, the bugs, how to handle that, how to track that, how to do the project planning. Like we had a Scrum board, which was just post-its on a whiteboard. And those post-its, like the glue was really shitty, so the post-its sort of started dwindling down, and they fell into the ventilation system. So we lost tasks to just grab it. And it's like, weren't we supposed to do? Where's that task? And it's like, oh, it's down here in the air duct.
You like pull out the vent, and then there's another month of work in there. Yeah.
So
Okay.
in the first scene in Magicka, when you start in Castle Alderon, what's the castle name? It was such a long time ago.
That's fine. We'll fix it in post. Yeah, the castle.
But yeah, because it's just a play on words on like retirement home in Swedish.
All right. Okay, cool.
Olderheim or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, the first scene is Vlad the Vampire teaching the wizard something or saying something like recapping the story of Magicka. And on his blackboard, there's post-its. And you can see them like in a pile underneath the blackboard as well, just as a tribute to what it was like.
Fantastic.
But Magicka really just, the development sucked. We crunched for like a year. The development plan that we set originally, I think it was off by 400-500%. So it's like, we're like 5 people a year. And it was like 10 people.
5 years.
Yeah, 2 years or 2.5 years.
Wow.
And then eventually Paradox ran out of patience with us. It's like, they're like, you guys have to ship this game.
Yeah.
And it's like, yes, we're working as hard and as fast as we can.
Yeah.
We're doing 16-hour days, 7 days a week, just like during a period.
Yeah.
And then when we're going to ship the final milestone, it's like me and Robin, who's supposed to do finance stuff, he's now a scripter and level designer.
Mm-hmm.
So we're sitting back to back, and he's working on one of the bosses, Parker, the giant spider.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm working on the last boss, Huster, the King in Yellow, so Cthulhu stuff.
Very cool.
Yeah, so he's like, I'm done with this boss. I'll turn around in my chair and I was going to look at it. And the spider, it's like proper Shelob, crawls out of the cave. And then just as the fight is about to start, the spider falls through the ground. And it's like, I was like, oh my God. And we got a bit defeated. And it's like, this is like the final milestones in this game. It's going to shit. And then it's like, well, look at what I've done. And we turned to my computer. I was going to show him the last boss fight. And the battle begins with, this demon descending from the skies. And then the battle's supposed to start. And as the demon hits the point where the fight is about to start, he comes down, and then he suddenly went up off screen, and then came back down again halfway, and then went back off screen, and then a third, and then eventually just the tentacles were dipping in to the top of the screen,
literally teasing you.
Yeah,
video games. I mean, Lisi, our old producer, once said to me something happened, and she just turned to me and she's like, "Video game development is an abusive relationship."
Yeah, it is
totally.
I mean that we were like. We just started laughing. It's like, this is it. We're fucked.
Yeah,
this is
it's
the end of
over.
it.
Yeah.
It's like, we'll go back to college and that will be it.
Yeah.
So anyway, skip forward to release day for Magicka. We knew that the release was in the milestone agreement where it said like, we're going to release on whichever date it was, somewhere in January or February. Mm-hmm. But we talked to Paradox and said, well, the game isn't ready. We need maybe a month more to just finish it and fix all the bugs. And then suddenly I get a message from somebody. No, I see one of my friends is like, on Steam is like, it's now playing Magicka. I'm like, what the fuck is going on? I open Steam and it's like, check the news page or the front page, and it's like newly released Magicka. I'm like, this game is in such a broken state. Like, I hope that nobody is going to buy this, like, because it's embarrassingly crashy and buggy. And we started seeing like, sales numbers, and it's like the first day is like 30,000 copies.
Oh my God.
And I was like, what is this going to mean? What happens if this keeps up and we're selling 30,000 copies for like a full week? And it's like, that's 150 to 200. It's like 10 days, 300,000 maybe. I was like, it felt like, standing in front of a crowd with your pants down. Yeah. I was like, shit. What
a very big crowd. Yeah.
And then like my Patrick, who's one of the designers over at Arrowhead, he was going to come in a community manager role. Mm-hmm. And he called me and it's like, yeah, we were talking about it. It's like, yeah, at release, like you'll come in and help, work on the game and just
manage the community.
Yeah. And he calls me up, okay.
You're right.
Let me try to get the story straight. So we're sitting there with our pants down. It's like, shit, I hope nobody notices how broken it is. Go to the Steam forums. And it's like, post after post after post of like, this game crash. It's like, this game's shit, it's so broken. And I get this call from Fluffy or Patrick. He's like, hey, I read the Steam forums. You want me to start tomorrow instead? I'm like, yes, please come in. And then it's like, we were sitting down. It's like, what the fuck are we going to do? It's like, because we have to do something. Because we can't let this just go to shit because of how buggy it is. And we're like, when Paradox were calling us, it's like, what the hell is going on? It's like, this game is selling way, way better. Paradox thought it would sell 50,000 copies total.
Yeah,
it's right. Like first day, 30,000.
Yeah.
It's like, okay. We were like, okay, what if we put out a patch every day? Like, just continuous
just
fixes.
Do it, yeah.
Not just wait until we've fixed everything, but just show that kind of incremental progress.
Yeah.
Because it works so well in modding. Mm-hmm. Like, you get the community to come with you on the journey of building the game.
Yeah.
So we were like, let's put out a patch every day. So we started patching like Monday, Tuesday, all through the week. And then over the weekend, we took 2 extra days and worked through the weekend to release a major patch on Monday instead.
Yeah.
So we did that continuously. I think we came up to 20 patches or something.
Wow.
So pretty much, a month straight, just fixing. And what happened is that the community really went from really super negative to this game is getting better by the day.
Yeah.
Like, they could see that kind of progress. And it even came to the point where, the game was sold at $10. We had, people that are cracking the game. I think after update 12, they wrote like, this will be our last crack for Magicka. These guys are patching the game so frequently that it's taking up all our time to crack this game over and over. And it's $10. Just buy the game.
Oh, that's amazing.
So it's like, okay. Outplay the
pirates. Yeah, the pirates are literally actually promoting your game. Yeah, telling people to buy your game. Incredible.
So first week was 300,000. First month, I think, was 1 million copies of Magicka, and now I think it's
1 million in a month.
Yeah, I think it's sold around 10 million copies to date.
Incredible, Johan.
Yeah. It's like, we were like, yeah, we're rich. This is going to finally play it out. Now we're going to be able to focus on making video games.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, the agreement with Paradox, coming back to that, is like, it's not the greatest agreement.
Paradox is rich, yeah.
Yeah, Paradox is rich. Arrowhead, not so much. Because apparently all of the marketing costs, anything associated with the project was seen in this agreement as a royalty advance.
Yeah, okay, so it's got to be recouped.
Yeah, on our part of the royalties.
Oh, okay,
so
right, interesting.
With those 30%, we recouped the stuff, and then the rest of it was just pure profit for Paradox. Which is something that, it says so in the agreement, but if you had read it.
That's it. We needed meatballs. There was no time to read that agreement.
Exactly. It's like, that's the aside.
Yeah, isn't it interesting though? And you probably could have redlined that and changed that around or something if you went through it and stuff.
Yeah.
All right, well, hey, Magicka has just sold 1 million copies in a month or something. It's on its way to 10. You've got this team now in an actual company, and success is in your future. But I think right now we have an awards show to go to here at DICE, where you're nominated for 5 categories and a mysterious 6th one, which of course we're not going to attempt any more lists. So we're gonna break here actually, and we're gonna give you time to go upstairs, get ready, and obviously look beautiful for the awards show. And we will come back at a later date, and we will talk all about Helldivers 1 and then Helldivers 2 and their journey there. Which sounds like a part of Helldivers 2 is similar to like the chaos of,
It's like, it's the same story. It repeats itself over and over again.
We'll do episode 2 and 3 next time.
Exactly. It's a pleasure talking to you. Really excited. It's gonna be kind of fun, like breaking now in the middle, and then the next one we'll know how it went.
How it went, exactly. There'll be commiserations or congratulations.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, well, hey, best of luck tonight, and we'll see you when we chat next.
Thank you, man.
Johan, welcome back.
Thank you, Trent. It feels like it was yesterday, but it's been ages.
No, I think it was a month since we recorded the last episode. Now, actually more, like a month and a half almost. And when we left off, you were walking almost immediately we had to stop because you were going to the DICE Awards, and you said, I just want to win Action Game of the Year, I think you said. And what did you end up winning?
Action Game of the Year.
There we go. Also, Online Game of the Year, audio and music as well, right?
Yeah.
We love a clean sweep.
Yeah, it was an amazing night, and especially, of course, getting that kind of recognition. But at some point, it started getting ridiculous.
Yeah. It's like you were up there time and time again. You were like the Nintendo guy the year that I think it was Breath of the Wild was nominated or something. So no, we were very happy to have you up on the stage. It's obviously a wonderful game, and happy to have you finally take home your coveted action game of the year. So congratulations.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I mean, the reason why that action game of the year meant so much to me is that it was one of the first big forum nominations that we got in the games industry. Like after we did Magicka, it was that could have won a lot of things, especially at the in the shows and whatnot. But we weren't wise enough to submit it for judgment or for the potential to win. We didn't. We thought that somebody would just notice it and then go like, oh, you guys win.
No, you got to be in it to win it, Johan. You know the rules.
Yeah, well, I'm kind of surprised. I figured this out after we had that list of like which things are we actually gunning for, and then I was like, that's why we haven't won that many awards in the past.
Yeah, well, I've definitely had those moments at the studio where you're like, did you submit for the thing? No, I thought you were submitting for the thing. Did you? No, no. And, emailing folks, trying to get it across the line.
I think it's a cultural thing, though, because for us as Northerners developers, even submitting your game for judgment in any sort of award show, it seems like a little bit of an arrogant thing to do. You see what I mean?
That's very Scandinavian of you. No, humbly, I cannot submit my game for an award. Like, God forbid someone would be able to see me do that.
Exactly. It's like, by doing this, are you bragging?
Very good. Just adjusting the mood lining in here. Yeah. All right, let's dive into it, because we left off. We charted the early days of Arrowhead. So thank you for our Arrowhead history lesson. That was very enjoyable diving into that with you over in Las Vegas, DICE. And now that we're on firm ground of our little home nations on opposite ends of the globe, you in the morning and me in the evening, let's hit that bridge in between. So we finished up in the last episode talking about Magicka, right? And the time you had on that. Let's cover off quickly that bridge between Magicka and the Helldivers IP. And we'll talk a little bit about Helldivers 1 and Helldivers 2. But I'm keen to spend a little bit of time hearing about the years in between, because obviously they led you to Helldivers 1, and you tackled Gauntlet and Showdown. So I think probably maybe a good way to get into that is like, how did Gauntlet come about after? Was it Gauntlet first? It was, and then Showdown, right?
Showdown first, and then
Showdown first, and then Gauntlet, right? So tell me about that and how you sort of come into that. Your time spent on those projects, some things learned, and then sort of how they led you to Helldivers.
So Showdown Effect was actually originally intended to be, two people making a video game based on sort of a premise of Lero. Wasn't that a great game? And it was created from sort of the depths of a business discussion over a paradox, or sort of a business. I don't even know if it was a discussion, but a thought around that. And then we took it on ourselves to do something with that. Very small, and we had another game running at the same time that was more of a true to form co-op game that we had to cancel because of the agreement that we signed on Showdown Effect to develop this sort of like 2-man project. And once resources were deallocated from the game that we're originally making to Showdown Effect to just wrap that up, the project grew in size, and it became something that we actually started paying more attention to. But then again, it was like, side-scrolling PvP only kind of shooter. It's not our forte, even though we sort of recognized its value, and had a lot of fun developing it. Like I think it's one of the games that we've had the most fun playtesting of all the games that we made. But unfortunately, Showdown Effect didn't really pay off, or it didn't pan out as we had hoped due to many reasons. I mean, PvP only side-scrolling shooter with like an innovative shooting mechanic. It wasn't meant to be.
Interestingly, you were modders that then made a shooting game that won a competition that then went on to your first game was a mega hit with Magicka, and then your second game, your sophomore title, kind of stumbled once that starter gun was fired. Was that, I can imagine that must have been quite a humbling experience to go from the heights of that mega hit to then on your second title kind of stumble.
Yeah, no, it absolutely was. And we sort of had this perspective of like whatever we will touch turns to gold. And I think to some degree we worked as hard on Showdown Effect as we did on Magicka, but we really didn't stay true to our core beliefs on exactly what we wanted to do with that game. Like there was a lot of external influences that came in and said, well, you have to develop games this way, like this, the way that you've done it before. It's basically, it became a Showdown development was a lot of throwing the baby out with the bathwater sort of style development. I'm not saying like we're perfect in any way, or that the formula that we have is the way to go, but at least it worked well for us. I think Showdown Effect, we thought that we would be able to, mostly do what we do and then be successful. But it turned out that we can't just, throw everything out and then try something completely new and then hope that it will be as big of a hit as Magicka. But anywho, so Showdown Effect, fun to play in a LAN setting, like that kind of classical 90s LAN party style. But when it comes to like a commercial product, so.
Yeah.
And, there were so many, newses like Twitch integration, in-game store, and leagues, esport, all things that we generally have a really, it's FAF on top. Core fundamentals of the game actually being enjoyable. Had we spent more time doing that rather than, ticking boxes saying like, this is the way that games are successful from, the worst interpretation of the games industry or games business. I think maybe it could have gone better. Like if we skipped Twitch integration and we skipped the in-game store and instead made, a co-op campaign or something like that, I think the appeal of Showdown would have been much greater. But really, like at the end of it, really what came out of it is like, okay, we have to make what we believe instead of what business partners think that we should do.
Yeah, I think we've all made that mistake before as developers. I remember Apple giving us advice at one point that was just objectively terrible. And I'm sure they thought it was great advice at the time. It sounded great to us. They even had the stats to show us, but it's some people just get it wrong sometimes.
Yeah, but it's telling Picasso to paint more realistically, more like Rembrandt.
Yeah.
Like or you just leave Picasso to do what Picasso does, and Rembrandt to do what Rembrandt does.
So how do you, now let's sort of move on to Gauntlet now. So now you're stepping onto Gauntlet with these, I'm not sure if, because some lessons aren't learned immediately, right? Sometimes it takes time to digest these things. How did you approach Gauntlet differently, or how was that project set up in a way? Or did you sort of continue to sort of repeat the same mistakes until you found yourselves at Helldivers?
Sort of. We after Showdown Effect, we were talking about making 3 games. So the games on that we had the potential to create were Magicka 2, Gauntlet, and Helldivers. So all 3 at the same time. So the one that I personally thought was the one that I really, really wanted to do was, of course, Helldivers. But a close second was Magicka 2, doing a proper sequel. So we actually negotiated with Paradox after the Showdown effect to create a sequel for Magicka. But we were, one of the things that we weren't happy about was the business arrangement on the Magicka side. So I kept pushing and pushing and pushing, like for a better and better and better deal for Magicka. But at the end of it, I think that I sort of in my heart had this concern of making a sequel to Magicka. Like the relationship with Paradox had gone from optimistic, like when they supported us in our student or dropout days to build Magicka, to the day when sort of the check finally came and sort of the business, we saw the end of that business arrangement. But to back off a little bit, I think it's important to sort of recognize the context. Showdown Effect didn't pan out. We were strapped for cash. We didn't know what to do. We through a mutual, through a friend that we met in the games industry, we got a connection with PlayStation. We pitched Helldivers to them. They were super excited. So we had that like ready to go. Magicka 2, we of course knew the people over at Paradox. It was a natural conclusion to make a sequel to Magicka.
Yeah.
And then we went to E3 for a meeting with Warner Brothers. And it was a meeting where it said like Warner Brothers Digital Initiative. I was like, okay, interesting. And Warner Brothers wanted to, get in on the indie game. They wanted to get small studios, build something small that they could then develop further. Sort of the same with PlayStation's. The reason why PlayStation was interested in Helldivers in the first case. So we were juggling all of these three, and at some point we sort of settled that. Okay, let's push for Helldivers. Let's get that signed. But since we're a studio now, we can probably make a couple of games at the same time. Right?
The infamously hardest thing to do as an indie studio is like,
it's like
you're about to
be a
find out
multi-project studio. Yeah. So we actually signed Helldivers, and then we were discussing what's our second project going to be, Magicka 2 or Gauntlet. And after a lot of conversation within the studio, we decided that like while Gauntlet is super interesting and it's one of the source inspirations to Magicka, we should really pursue making Magicka 2 as well. We'll have one team on Magicka 2, and then we'll have one team on Helldivers.
Magicka 2? Magicka 2 and Helldivers. Okay.
Magicka 2 and Helldivers, yeah. So we told Warner Bros., hey, thank you for your trust in wanting to give us the Gauntlet IP. But unfortunately, we've decided to move on with a different project. And then I told Paradox, like, yeah, let's go ahead with Magicka 2, but I really think that royalty rates or something, I can't remember. I made some kind of demand on them. It's like, I'm ready to sign if you just give us this as well. And this was like a fifth iteration of demands that I put on the agreement with Paradox, making Magicka 2. So at that point, like, I told the studios, like, hey, everybody, we made up our mind. We've just told Warner Brothers no, and Helldivers is already signed. We're going to start that very soon. And then Magicka 2, that's the game that we're making. But I'm just going to try for one more thing during negotiation. And at that point, Fred came back. So Fredrik Wester, the CEO of Paradox, he came back and said, I often make, I almost always make business decisions with my gut. And what my gut is telling me is that the relationship between Arrowhead and Paradox has gone sour over the years. And I think that we can't start a business relationship on these grounds. So therefore, we have to say no to signing. We have to stop negotiations, and we have to say no to developing Magicka 2. So there we were, a studio of, I think we had grown to like 20 something, and we had signed one project, so Helldivers with PlayStation, that covered sort of half of the burn, so the cost of the studio. We had said no to Warner and got a no from Paradox on making the next game, which meant that we were overstaffed.
Yeah.
But in Sweden, you can't just lay off people. Everybody has a pretty long notice period, most of the time between 2 and 3 months. And I went back and did the financial calculation where I saw that no matter what we do, if we lay off like almost everybody at the studio, it would still eat up all the available funds that we had, even with the money coming in from Helldivers, and it would actually crash the studio.
Yeah, because there's all of the benefits and retrenchment payments and everything like that.
Exactly. Yeah. So really what we had done is that we had signed Helldivers 1 with PlayStation, and then promptly we were going to go bankrupt. And then basically just do the best impression of us as responsible business people in the games industry just before we'd even started.
Yeah.
So we would kill that project that they would have had signed.
I just gave a talk on this at GDC. It's amazing how fast this stuff can, like, if you don't know your shutdown costs, like, you can be operating like weeks or months into, like, you know, beyond, you know, insolvency. It's crazy, and it jump scares a lot of devs. Like, it jump scared you. So so you've obviously gone back to Warner Brothers and you've done an about face and said, actually, we'll take it. Were they just ready to come to the party?
No, so the only sensible thing to do at that point, because we told them a very firm no, like, we unfortunately we don't think this is working. So I talked to ML, one of the co-founders, and I was like, what the fuck are we gonna do? And we did the only sensible thing. We went out drinking. And in the middle of, like,
business plans are forged.
3 beers in, I got a call from one of the executives over at Warner, and he's picked up the phone and he's like, "I don't accept your no. You like, you make the Gauntlet that you want to make," because there was a lot of talk about mobile game and so forth. We were like, oh, this is getting into Showdown territory where there were a lot of executive decisions made that they influenced the game in such a way where we wouldn't be able to realize what we wanted to make. But he called up and was like, you know what? I'm ready to gamble on you just getting a carte blanche on whatever you want to do.
Wow.
And I was like, wow, okay, this actually turned out all right. And we had an agreement signed basically the day after to make both Gauntlet and Helldivers.
Yeah, you're like, that sounds like a fantastic idea, and we're an incredibly stable and well-funded studio right now.
we're not at all in
trouble.
Yeah. So it turned. So after that, like, there's a Swedish term for it called gravöl. It directly translates to grave beer. But it's kind of like, it's the last beer you drink together with somebody that has passed away.
Right,
so at the post funeral, or if somebody has passed away, you drink to their honors. So we were basically having that for Arrowhead.
Yeah,
and then it turned into like a celebration of actually signing Gauntlet.
It's amazing, like how close we can get to the end.
Yeah. So this of course prompted the next challenge, and I mean, challenge after challenge after challenge. I think the games industry is starting a game studio is kind of like if you remember Star Fox, where you want to get to the secret levels and you have to pass through those rings. You have to consecutively fly through these rings that appear during the level. And if you miss one, all of the ones behind disappear.
Mm.
And the games industry is kind of like that when you start a studio. You have to thread the needle at each step and be successful or lucky at each one. Anything else is failure.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
and it's
There are more lucky rings than success rings as well, right?
yeah, and each ring is like, it's a 50% chance that you'll get it, or maybe 75% chance. Let's say 50%, but it compounds. So 50%, then with 2 rings turns into 25%, turns into 12.5%, and so forth. Like, and the more hurdles you have to jump through, because everything you bet all on black at every turn, and hopefully, like, you start off with a little bit of money, and then eventually it grows, and that money is of course representative of the time that you have until your demise, and the amount of people that you can bring on. So it's a challenging business. It's a very challenging business.
It certainly is. So you're cashed up now, or at least you've got contracts signed, one with PlayStation, one with WB. You're actually now making 2 games parallel. You're doing the difficult indie studio thing.
Yep.
Why don't we let's actually just dive straight into Helldivers, and like if there's any sort of anecdotes about sort of Gauntlet or the team or anything sort of along the way while we're talking about Helldivers 1. But let's close off this period of Helldivers 1, because but obviously Helldivers 1 went on to be a success. I mean, I remember playing it with our co-founders and having a blast, and it's sort of arriving onto the scene as like almost like the next spiritual successor from the Magicka crew. But you're obviously laying the groundwork for what would become this essentially like a cultural phenomenon, like the Helldivers 2.
Yeah.
Being at GDC this week, there are a ton of folks there that were like super Earth soldiers, like clearly you'll have like part of your community wandering around the ground. So it's still strong today. So let's dive into that Helldivers 1 time period and setting up the franchise, because I know, Johan, I worked with you on your GDC talk, and I was there as well when you gave it. You speak a lot about the fundamentals of Helldivers 2 and the fundamentals of Arrowhead as a studio, and the themes and everything. But obviously, I imagine a bunch of that the groundwork was laid with Helldivers 1. So let's kick it off. Tell me about Helldivers 1 and sort of how it came about and that seed of inspiration, and how you got off and running.
Yeah, so Helldivers was almost a counter reaction to sort of what we perceived as the failure of Showdown. So one of the things that we really wanted to do is let's return to form, and let's really embrace the philosophy that we had making Magicka. And we split the studio in such a way where we tried to separate, like if we had 4 good programmers, 2 went to Helldivers and 2 went to Gauntlet, and we really tried to split it like that. It's like everybody gets, it's kind of like, a draft in school where everybody picks one person. It's like, I'm going to have this on the team, this one. And then unfortunately we have leads to last pickings, but whatever. We really try to get it as close as possible. And Gauntlet was more embodied by the sort of the philosophy that was in Showdown Effect and sort of the creative leadership on that. Still with more of Magicka, and then Helldivers was full on, like, this is what we believe in as a studio. And Helldivers at its core was just the thought of, can we just make a shooter with sort of the philosophy that lies at the heart of Arrowhead, top-down shooter, and what would that be? What are the themes that we would tackle? What are the gameplay mechanics that we would tackle? And the theme of Helldivers came sort of, a lot of people, of course, do the immediate parallel between Helldivers and Starship Troopers. And of course, it's a big inspiration and big reference. But that, that actually came some ways into development. The original inception of Helldivers was just that thought of, can we be a henchman of a totalitarian state where morals are, I wouldn't say objective, but we knew that we wanted a game where you sort of were the baddies in this war. Like there's this great Mitchell and Webb sketch where there's two Nazis and they're starting to doubt themselves. It's like, are we really the good guys of this story?
Have you seen the skulls on our hats? Yeah,
exactly, that one. And really, that was the original inspiration from Helldivers. Can we make that game where you fight for something, and then you're a little bit like, but we seem awfully bad based on iconography, and it's the reason why the logo for Helldivers is a skull, comes directly from that skit.
That's amazing. Yeah, I knew that because obviously in your GDC talk, right, like you have that gif of the "Are we the baddies?" and then it's like that plus a bunch of stormtroopers like blazing into a room, right, in the original Star Wars: New Hope, and it's like Helldivers is essentially these two things. But I had no idea that the actual skit went. Not only that the skit was there at the seed of inception, and that you hadn't just sort of like, this is a gif that kind of makes sense with our game, and use it in your GDC talk when we were chatting about it, you and I. But that it was actually the seed, but then that it's the inspiration for the logo. It's crazy.
Yeah, no. So and after we'd done the first couple of versions of Helldivers, sent them over to PlayStation for review. Yeah, they came back and said, like, guys, we already kind of have this game. It's called Killzone.
Oh, right, yeah.
And it's like, we have to do something different. And they're like, unfortunately, it's because it was very close to you just being one of the Helghast, the original builds.
Yeah.
And it's like, what I think we need to change this up. So PlayStation offered a lot of help to rediscover what the IP was. And at that point, like as we always do at the studio, we just go back to what we like. And it's like, what do we like?
I thought you were going to say we went out drinking, as we always do at the studio.
Well, I mean, that was part of it.
Beer.
That's the process. But the fundamental belief is like, let's just go back to our childhood and let's do something that we really like. And those references are Terminator, Aliens, Orm 40,000, etc., etc., etc. Sort of everything that built us as developers or us as founders. So, and we have sort of that shared view of what that is. And it's like, okay, what if we just make it less you as a basically Helghast shooting zombies, which was the original sort of thought on what the game would be. Let's make that into Helghast shooting bugs. And I was like, but it's still Helghast style. And then one of our art director, or maybe we didn't even have an art director at the time, but one of our artists is like, what if it's less Helghast and it's more like, superheroes, superhero themed. And I really, really enjoyed that thought. And it's like, yes, you know what? That's exactly what we need. And he drew like, the picture of the Helldiver character that we had, but with a cape on. It's like, that's so great, because it played into one of the things that I really appreciate about, military history. Most of the time when special forces are formed, it's not because, and the way that they recruit, it's not because, people wanted to be special forces. It's more of a more shallow thing. It's like a dare or an additional dollar here and there to be doing something that's ridiculously dangerous and stupid. And then you get a little bit of a bragging right by, naming that unit an elite unit. So the Helldivers unit came out of that sort of thought of like Super Earth as a totalitarian regime. What if they just told you, well, you're elite soldiers, you have a cape, but you're not really elite. That like you're still normal human, regular person with no better abilities than anybody else, but you have a cape, and then we just lean into it and tell the players like, you're so good, you're so awesome. You know, the classical trope of that you can see in almost any sort of American fiction versus European, and where it becomes the single savior that's supposed to save the day. What if you use the same mantra, but the person itself is extremely, extremely fragile? What would that do to the IP? And we just played into that and came up with that Helldivers unit. Like we changed the logo a little bit so that it became more inspired by American iconography. That's where the sort of an entire trope of like freedom, liberty, democracy came from. It was the original memes back in the day, where it's like, knock knock, who's there? Democracy, and it's like 5 American soldiers, kicking in a door.
Yeah, I remember the memes.
Yeah, and it's just, I think it naturally evolved into that space based on who we were at the time, who were there, and who we were at the time.
Mm.
And I think all games are a little bit like that. If you're 10 people, each puts a piece of their soul into the game, and the game becomes a product of those who were there at the time.
Yeah,
it's almost like a timepiece.
Yeah, it's like a little time capsule, right? Yeah, it's so true.
Yeah. So anyway, Helldivers development. After everything we learned from developing Magicka and Showdown at the time, and also some of the knowledge from Gauntlet, to mention Gauntlet, like the studio, we thought that we were going to be able to do 2 projects at once, and we sort of were. But what happened is that we got 2 studios, really.
Yeah.
Like we originally had this great plan of like, let's share technology, knowledge, resource sharing.
Yeah.
But then we got stuck in building the games, and we never talked, even though they were literally in the other room next to us.
This is me on our last 2 projects as well, making 2 strategy games, and with 2 teams, started them at the same time and everything. And there would be times something's happening, I'm like, why have we remade this for both games?
Yeah.
And of course, 90% of the time or 70% of the time, there's a very valid reason for that, and 30% is just like because people didn't put their heads up and ask. There are so many challenges in this multi-team practice for sure.
Yeah, I mean, the first thing we'd set up was what we called the Arrowhead Foundation, which was going to be a collection of shared resources between games. We kept that going for, I think, 2 weeks out of 2 years development, and then after that, we branched off into 2 completely separate paths. So
yeah, great intentions.
Yeah, exactly, great intentions. In practice, so.
See, what we need to realize is actually developing parallel teams and games is really just about the friends we make along the way, not the tech that we share or anything like that.
I agree. I agree. But Helldivers development in general was super smooth, and it was, the return to form. I mean, a lot of people think about games being, the creative mind behind it, or the creative that leads to a great game. But I really believe that it's more about the way that you develop rather than what you develop that makes a great game.
Mm.
So,
in that, just to jump in there for a second, the way that you develop instead of what you're developing, obviously a lot of, what people would assume the magic of Helldivers is the what. And, we spent a lot of time just talking about the concept, but what in particular about that Helldivers development made it so successful, or the way that you developed it that sort of brought that secret sauce that you're alluding to?
So one thing is that we didn't have conventional production. We came into the office every day, played the game between 9 and 10, and then we had our stand-up, our morning meeting, where we talked about what we just played. We talked about, is this as good, or is this better than it was yesterday? And if it was worse, we threw out all the plans that we had for the day and fixed it so that tomorrow's playtest would be more fun than it was today.
Hmm.
It was always a focus on ensuring that we had a better time the day after than we had the day before. Sometimes,
Wow.
we had really long things that took a lot of time, but we never allocated more than half of the team working on something that wouldn't improve the game for the next playtest. And it
What
was
did you
always getting to that, like, next playtest, can it be more fun than we had today?
And so what do you do in those moments in a game where, and maybe you didn't have this in your development, but usually most of the time in development, there are periods where the game does need to go through a bit of a rough patch to come out the other end. Maybe there's some major systems that are coming in, or something hits it's a little bit awkward that needs to get into the build, needs to hit master but is not quite there yet. What do you do during those times? Did you have any of those periods, or did you just sort
Yeah,
of integrate them into this process?
absolutely. We had those, but they came only after the point where we played the game and made it better. Like always, like, we need a new enemy, we need to do this, we need to do that, and it was always in the interest of making the next game's playtest better. But after a while, we came to a point where it's like, we need something fundamentally new to make this exciting, because we're sort of sick and tired of playing the same thing.
Yeah.
And at that point, we kind of decided to break the game to then make it better again. So we implemented, built a massive system, or implemented a new faction, or whatever it might have been, that takes a little bit more time. But as soon as we could play it, we started playing it again, and then the process continued.
Yeah.
So at first we only had the bugs in the game, and then we added the cyborgs, and then the Illuminate. So when we added the cyborgs, we basically paused for a week or something like that, or 2 weeks. We still played the game against the bugs, but as soon as we had an inkling of being able to play against the cyborgs, we only played them. And then we did the same thing. It's like, oh well, we need another unit. We need to do this thing, or we need to change this, or whatever it might be. And it was always iterative. Everybody played, or everybody was at least in the room while the game was played. So everybody heard all of the conversations, and we were able to, like, fully align on every piece of decision that we made. And because everybody was sort of involved in all of the conversations, everybody had in their head sort of the chronicling of why one decision was made, the next and the next and the next subsequent decision. And we didn't ever have to sort of backtrack to explain why decisions were made in one way or another. And that was our stand-up. Our stand-up meetings were actually sit-down meetings. So between 10 and 11, like, it was originally supposed to be between 10 and like 10 or 10:05 or something like that. But sometimes those meetings were between 10 and 12, just talking about, like, what are we doing with this game. Everybody was there. They knew all of the decisions made, and therefore we could be very precise with what we were building.
And what was the team size at the height of production? You're still quite lean, you're like 20 or something like that? Or?
Yeah, a little bit less than 20. I think 17 or 18 at the height of production. But then Helldivers never really had production in the true sense of the word. It was always this sort of this spiritual, the prototype mentality lived throughout the entire development of Helldivers.
Wow.
And at the end, when the game was done, like, we just iterated upon it to get to a point where it was completed. Even, I guess towards the end, you got a little bit more into production, where we knew we had to sim ship on PS Vita, PS3, and PS4. And at that point, it's like, okay, well, we just need a little bit more muscle to actually push through and realize sort of the technical requirements.
Yeah.
Or overcome the technical requirements. And then once the game was done, we played it together with PlayStation, like our wonderful friends over at PlayStation. And they give us some really sound advice or sound feedback. Then they've done they did throughout the entire development, because they were also playing it every day. So once we got together and discussed the game, like, it was just pure, like, what about this thing in the game? It's not right there. But after the game was done, we looked at the entirety of it, and the feedback from PlayStation was that this game really needs some kind of progression. And we had just made it as a one-off, like, let's more like, Overcooked, where you just play a session without
Gotcha.
actually having any character progression. But given how aligned the team was, it was super easy to coming out of the meeting with PlayStation, deciding that we're going to spend 3 more months working on this game, and then we'll release it. Came back to the team and said, hey, everybody, PlayStation perspective is that this game needs some kind of long-term retention or long-term progression mechanics. We talked to them and we agree. What can we do? And then the team, we talked for maybe 2 hours, 3 hours, and came up with sort of the progression system that exists in Helldivers, where it's like level up, unlock, but upgrade your weapons. That was the key of it. And stratagems were, I can't remember what stratagems were before, but we basically tied stratagems as rewards to completing planets.
Ah, great.
And then, and then that's how we just set our minds to it, developed that, and actually had that implemented, within a very short amount of time, because that kind of alignment and that process of what is it, what is it not, was so smooth. And then after that, it's like rather undramatic release, in the sense that we didn't have to crunch to get the game out. I mean, a little bit to get some of the technical issues out of the way. There were no major, we had a significant backlog of bugs, but a lot of it was like ridiculous stuff that
not
QA found.
stuff.
It's like, the slide on the pistol only locks back 4 out of 5 times.
Stop the presses. We got to fix this. Yeah.
So, but Helldivers 1 is probably the easiest time I've had making a game ever, and the most enjoyable one. Even though, I mean, we had some internal conflicts. There was a lot of discussion, a lot of heated arguments, but all of them were made in, what's it called, with a foundation of trust between everybody that was on the team.
In the interest of the title, right? Your surgeons talking about the patients on the table as opposed to arguing with each other, right?
Exactly. Okay, and then moving on to Helldivers 2, which is an interesting one. So after Helldivers 1, and I assumed that was actually what you were gonna ask,
I was just gonna say, because obviously you've had some degree of success for then PlayStation to turn around and be like, okay, let's do it again at 10x, 5x the budget or something like that, and let's go. So tell me about how that bridge came about to Helldivers 2, and how it, because there are some fundamental things. Obviously the big one is the shift in perspective from top down to third person, but tell us about those internal conversations that came with the success after the successful launch of Helldivers that you had with PlayStation.
So after the launch, which went really well, we got a pretty good Metacritic score, sold a ton of units, but there was always this sort of thought on the PlayStation side that Helldivers has probably reached its potential in the space that it lives. But what would actually Arrowhead be able to do in a third person, sort of more conventional or more mass appeal? Not necessarily style of game, but style of game as well. At least when it comes to high fidelity visuals and all of that, all of those bells and whistles, that would make it easier for somebody to go maybe I'll really get into this game and maybe I'll like it. because top-down shooters are always a little bit of a hard sell for some people.
Yeah.
It feels archaic and it feels a little bit old school.
Yeah.
So only the people that are into indie games, or mostly people that are into indie games or have that nostalgia to top-down shooters, will get a top-down shooter over a third-person shooter. So there was that question of like, well, what would Helldivers or a similar game be like, made in the sort of the Arrowhead way? So we pitched. We actually pursued a different title first after Helldivers, and tried some other avenues where it's like maybe we want to do this, maybe we want to do that. But after release of Helldivers, like we were still releasing updates and doing a lot of stuff for that game. We had some time to think about what the next game was going to be. And then after a while, we came back to PlayStation and said, you know what? Let's just work on Helldivers. Let's make Helldivers 2. Because even though the Helldivers production was sort of, easy, it still was kind of draining. So it would be nice to do a sequel because it would be so easy and be pretty fast. So therefore we could make another game afterwards. And the game took 7 years, 11 months and 26 days to make. Our original projection was that it would take maybe 2 years to make a sequel to Helldivers in third person, because we had basically all the answers from Helldivers 1.
Yeah.
So therefore, we made a little prototype, and that was super easy. Like, it was just Helldivers 1 in a third person perspective.
Yeah.
Worked out exceptionally well. And that gave us even more confidence, given that we made a small prototype in like 2 months or 1.5 months that looked amazing. It would be so easy to just make this game. It's such a terrible, terrible misunderstanding of what game development is. And at that point, we'd been working together for such a long time still.
It's your 5th game or something right now.
Yeah. So yeah, exactly. and we just got it so wrong. But we went back to PlayStation and said, okay, but you know what? And they were a little bit hesitant about the other things that we wanted to do. The spin-off games on Helldivers. There was the dungeon crawlers and whatnot.
Yeah.
And when we were like, the easiest thing to pitch, the easiest thing to sell, the easiest thing to make is just Helldivers again, but in a different format. And let's see how high that game can fly. Came back to PlayStation and said, okay, but we're ready to do Helldivers 2. And this was just before DICE Awards, and that's why the award Best Action meant so much to me. Is that we told PlayStation's like, well, we really want to do Helldivers 2, and they said, unfortunately, our budget is already fully allocated, because the fiscal year over at PlayStation starts in March or April.
Yeah, April.
So they've already fully allocated all of the games that they were going to make, and we came back to them maybe in February saying like, we want to do this game. There was one, I can't remember which game it was, that ran over budget and needed some additional funds. It was one of their big titles. So they told us like, unfortunately, like we can't fund this. And then went to DICE Awards. We won Best Handheld Game and were nominated for Best Action Game that year. The category for Best Action Game, even this year, did not contain like an indie shooter. Right, so we were going toe to toe with, I can't remember what it was, but the likes of Battlefield, Call of Duty, and whatnot, and then
GTA
you had Helldivers in there. So after we had won Best Handheld and got a nomination, plaque basically for being nominated for Best Action Game, we sat down together with 2 of the senior VPs of PlayStation and started talking about the success and the future. And really the meeting was about them telling us that unfortunately we can't fund another game with you. and at that point, it was the scare and threat of bankruptcy once more for Arrowhead.
Spectre raises its head once again.
And I remember that dinner well. It was a 5-hour dinner. I was originally just intended to be 2 hours, but the conversations ran long. And the first thing that one of the SVPs over at PlayStation said, the courteous conversation that you have before you get into business and talking about serious stuff. Mm-hmm. It was, so I heard you're getting married. And I was. And I replied with, yeah, originally I was, but given our financial situation, we had to postpone the wedding. So it's like the first courteous, like talking about anything but business, turned immediately into a business conversation.
Yeah, and agreeing with that, yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, there's so much heart at PlayStation, and I think that was one of the strengths of PlayStation back in those days, is that they just wanted the studios and talent and the people that they were working with to have a good time and to be successful. So Helldivers, the original, there was no more room in the budget, but one of the things that we promised dearly after that long business dinner was that we would absolutely make Helldivers 2 into a VR game, because there was room in the VR budget.
Right.
And then they unlocked funds through that just to get us started, with a small team and whatnot. And that then turned into, after like a year later, when the new budget process at PlayStation happened, we were able to then finally get the original sort of scope on the Helldivers 2 budget that we intended, and at that point unlock the potential. And at that point, like, the VR promise was scrapped.
Yeah, okay.
Because
that initially, just out of curiosity, was the initial VR sort of promise, was that still third person, or was it meant to be a first person? Okay, wow.
It was a first person. Somewhere we said, well, maybe we'll have a first person component in VR and so forth. But I mean, the people over at PlayStation, they're super lovely, and they really, really just wanted to help us. But of course, like, within the constraints of a bigger organization, you have to play ball with what is given to you. Yeah. So even though, and I'm dear friends with both the SVPs over at PlayStation that actually made Helldivers happen. It's because they were so creative. They knew that the game had to be made, but the organization couldn't, based on various reasons.
It's really amazing how much, and this is something that, like, quote unquote gamers, or the game playing public don't see a lot of the time. And I think even some developers that don't get a chance to interface with, like, some of these folks, or for whatever reason don't have internal champions. And that's the success of so many games and developers, like, can boil down to internal champions.
Yeah, no, it absolutely does. I think it's more of a rule than an exception.
Yeah, I would completely agree. And they come up from, like, time and time again, like developers talking about particular people at publishers that are navigating them internally, or, guiding their creative, like, with almost, no credit or public facing idea that, these folks are helping some of the most successful games, not just be the successes that they are, but commercially, but also creatively, but then also ensure that studios like yours exist to see the next day. We've had it too. We've had internal champions that have ensured that we didn't go the way of the dodo at particular points in time, Yeah.
It's and that makes me sort of wonder, like, I wonder how many games fail to find that champion. There are, like, fully viable, like, awesome games.
Yeah.
What are those games that never got to see the light of day, that had the potential to be like a smash hit or like a breakout success?
There's even another question that's interesting there, which is how many people working at these organizations don't realize that they can be so effective as internal champions, that with some creative maneuvers internally and, like you say, finding funds in a VR budget instead of, a flagship sort of pot of cash, how much it can actually, well, then turn around into what? PlayStation's most profitable title or something like that.
No.
All right. So you've got the project now. You're like in year one or whatever, you're heading into year two. You've got the flagship funds. The shape of the game at that point in time, did it resemble what shipped 6 years later?
In a lot of ways, yes. I think Helldivers 1 was the thought of, what if we do a top-down shooter, but that's really a third-person shooter? So a lot of the detailed mechanics in Helldivers 1 is, straight from like Ghost Recon or whatever it might be, or Battlefield or those kind of games. Like the way that you have ADS in a top-down game. As soon as you push the stick in a direction, your character lifts their gun, your movement becomes slow, but your fire becomes more precise. Helldivers 2, on the other hand, I mean, we couldn't keep the same formula. But really what Helldivers 1 is trying to get people to play a more complex game than what is shown on the box or the visual art style dictates. So Helldivers 2, in a lot of ways, was the thought of like, can we get people to play a third-person game but tricking, or play a milsim while just tricking them that it's a regular horde shooter?
Yeah.
So we experimented quite a bit with how hardcore were we going to go with Helldivers 2. So in the original sort of concept of the game, I think it was a little bit more milsim, a little bit more Arma. And then we went back to form with some of the sort of simplistic mechanics that we had in Helldivers 1, such as, throwing stratagem balls. In the first version, we had, a laser pointer that you used, like a laser targeter that indicated where you wanted the stratagem to land. So in the top-down format, it made sense to just chuck an object, and then wherever that lands, that's where the stratagem comes in.
Yep.
But in the third-person game, we thought that distances would be too large. So I want to be able to, call in an airstrike on something that was maybe 100, 200, 300 meters away.
Yeah.
So I think those kind of like, it was a little bit more milsim, a little bit more appropriate for the third-person perspective. We went back and returned to what we had done in Helldivers and really tried to get that to work in third person instead, which really was the right thing to do.
Yeah, and there's something really interesting about that you, maybe this is something that you found along the way, but the thing that immediately jumps out to me as to why the reason for that might be is when you're looking at a top-down game, you're coming up with solutions that fit within the screen space, right? But even Helldivers 2, like if I think about videos from Helldivers 2, all of those amazing videos that came out from players, like when it launched and everyone was discovering all this crazy shit that was going on, there's hardly ever a video where someone's like engaging folks 200 meters away and that's like they're posting that on the internet, right? It's all of the proximity stuff that if you took the camera in that Helldivers 2 video and you made it top down, they would all be in that screen space, right, of top down. So it's interesting by going back to those mechanics and tools that utilized in a top down sense, you're kind of bringing the design of a third person game, which is usually fought and at range, at least shooters, right? You're bringing it into a much more closer proximity, intimate shooter that's led to this like controlled chaos that we see.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that just came out of necessity and sort of the way that the game evolved. Like we pushed combat distances in quite a bit from those, like that original like 2-year mark.
Yeah, that was a conscious thing that you were doing, trying to bring in that proximity.
It was an iterative thing, I think.
Yeah.
Combat distances originally were like maybe 300 meters, and then it was 275, and then 250, and then 125, or something like that. It's like,
and then it was
it kept closer and closer and closer until it like, this actually feels good.
Yeah, great.
But the one of the biggest flaws in that early period of Helldivers is that we stopped iterating in the same way as we did during Helldivers 1.
Mhm.
So one thing that happened is that to be able to make Helldivers, we took the Gauntlet team and the Helldivers team and we smushed them together. And if you remember, I said that the Gauntlet team was basically its own studio and the Helldivers team was its own studio. It's merging two cultures that made games in a very different way, and trying to get them to work in unison in one unified way. And the problem as well is that both teams had grown individually to become 17-man teams, 18-man teams. And running a game development team of less, I normally say this, like, if you can still make a reservation at a restaurant and fit the entire team, it's manageable.
Yeah.
Scope size-wise.
Yeah.
But as soon as we combined the Helldivers and the Gauntlet team, we were no longer able to do so. And we failed to realize the complexities of having that many developers on the game. At the same time, we had also forgone the prototyping phase of making a game because we knew what Helldivers was. We'd already made Helldivers 1, and this was just going to be a third-person version of that to some degree. So we thought that we could jump straight into production. I mean, the pre-production that we had was just establishing, art style and sort of what is the lore, what are the developments since the last game. So it was never about, the technical challenges that we need to overcome. Or actually even playing the game and is it fun in third person, because we were so confident that it would be. And this is something that bit us in the behind for years on years, because we skipped that kind of crucial gate of ensuring that with a smaller team the game is fun. We constantly were in production and prototyping at the same time, trying to distill what made Helldivers 2 special in a third person environment while producing the final assets for the game. And I don't know how many times we remade both the Helldiver and the main antagonist, so the bug warrior.
Yeah.
Due to this decision.
Just constant iteration, trying to figure that out.
Yeah, no, we were always 1 or 2 milestones behind. It felt like throughout 8 years of development. And not only that, like the original scope of Helldivers was supposed to be, 2.5 years, 2 years or something like that.
Yeah.
But as soon as it became clear, like, we're not going to be able to make this, we added another year of development. So I don't think at any period during Helldivers development we were further than 18 months out from launch.
Right. Yeah.
Right. And that for all the developers listening, it's easy to see, like, okay, so you're basically in closing mentality at that point.
Yeah, that's all I was just thinking too. Constantly closing out a game for like 6 years is crazy.
Yeah, no, it's not great, because closing is really hard.
Yeah.
And especially since the game wasn't delivering. So we had to, we were constantly closing the game, and at the same time we were prototyping it.
Yeah, it's a crazy thing because, if you had it, obviously in hindsight, right, or something, or in some magical land where this is even possible, right? If you just stopped and said, we're restarting, let's just, the game's going to ship 3 years from now, whatever, let's start again, go back to basics or whatever, then you can get out of that closing mentality, and maybe you close it out in 3 years. But by staying in the closing mentality, you're tripping over yourselves at the end, trying to do things. You're working actually slower, almost perpetuating the possibility of actually extending the time further and further, which it sounds like is what happened, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this came from us not having the cred or the gravitas to be able to say, hey, can't we just pause development and then let's get it right? Because we were constantly worried that if we did, we would admit failure, and in that case it would be an easy decision to just stop production of the game.
Yeah, of course.
When you're a new development, that fear of getting a project canceled or stopped is the same as a death sentence for the studio.
Yeah.
And I think it's something that publishers have a tendency to not, or bigger studios have a tendency to forget that. For them, it's like, well, we stopped this project, but I mean, the studio will just do fine. They will find another project or do something else. But most of the time, you invested so much into developing the game, and you don't have the time to focus on ensuring that you have a backup plan. Everything at the studio, when you're getting started and trying to make it, is about ensuring that the game becomes as successful as possible. And if you're not, I think you're focusing on the wrong things. Like if I were out trying, to set up a backup plan to make another game in case this Helldivers were to fail halfway through development, I'm not spending my time developing the game.
Yeah, it can become a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's such a hard thing because, again, I think it's worth, you've obviously got your phenomenal CEO, Shams Georgiani, now, but like during this whole time, right, you're a CEO and game director of this thing,
Yeah, absolutely.
And we're in this situation, especially for a lot of indie studio heads where that's the case, and especially even working at scales that you're working at this point in time, that's such a hard decision to make. Because like, when do you stop working in the business and on the game and start working on the business, in these moments?
Yeah. No, and I think, during those kind of like the entrepreneur days or the building of a studio days, you have to just commit. You have to recognize that the games industry, as with all other entertainment industries, are super risky. And if you don't put all your time into the game or whatever you're making, it's unlikely that you'll succeed. It is unlikely that you'll succeed even when you do that. But spending additional time or resources on anything but making the best game possible becomes, as you said, a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah. I want to ask a question that I think a lot of people wouldn't usually get insight into, and I'm sure you can only talk about it to a particular degree. But there are titles that are scoped out to take. What was your initial time frame for the title? Was it 2.5 years? You said
2.5 years. Yeah.
Okay, but then you end up spending 7 years, 11 months, and 26 days on it, right? Tell me about those conversations with PlayStation. What does this look like functionally? How can you help other developers understand that, say they're working with a publisher, and obviously, PlayStation is an incredible publisher and supporter of game developers, like you've just said, for this exact reason, like giving developers the resources that they need, whether it be first-party studios like Last of Us or folks like yourself, Naughty Dog, working on something like The Last of Us or whatever, or whether it be folks like yourself working, on a smaller scale on Helldivers 2. Tell me about those times when you went back to them and what was involved in actually getting this project extended for so long, and I'm sure you probably, some of those conversations reached the point where you were, just a hair away from having them sort of swing the axe, right?
Absolutely. Several times. There were always like these voices of like, what are these guys and girls doing over in
what are these crazy Swedes doing with our money?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think one of the things that we always have done as a studio is that we always tried to come in under budget, be a very affordable game to make.
Mm-hmm.
Throughout our history, because it's when you start looking at the spreadsheet of budget, and you go like, well, this game, it doesn't cost a ton, so therefore saving that amount of money is not going to help like whatever situation you're in, and
it's not like they're choosing between, to invoke them again, like Naughty Dog's next game and your game, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Completely different scales.
Yeah, it's like it doesn't even come close. But I think at its heart, it is the personal connections that we made with the people that made the decisions, and sort of their willingness to take a gamble on this game, and sort of the transparency, openness, the desire, the passion that we were able to clearly articulate and embody. That made them sort of believe in us as people, maybe a little bit more than the game itself. And it's like, it's also the seniority of the people that we were working with, that they understood, like, well, we are an indie studio that now tries to go for like /AAA. And that transitional period is going to cost something. It's going to be an investment into the future, and maybe it will pay off, maybe it doesn't, but it's still not enough money. I mean, it's enough money to be able to take that sort of risk. With. It's gambling money.
Yeah, and the size of the bet wasn't enough to get them to walk away from the table, right?
Yeah. But the way that we navigated is just by just having somebody over the other side of the fence, over at PlayStation, that helped us navigate it. Like, we had no idea when to pitch what, when to do what, how to sort of sell it, and how to get an extension once more. But the production people and the business people over at PlayStation, they sort of walked us through it. And I think it's such a favorable thing to do, instead of, getting canceled because of a gotcha, because we didn't submit like a request for additional funds in the right time for that big meeting that the top executives over PlayStation had.
Yeah.
Like they were able to navigate that together with us, and we provided materials, made all of the created reasoning, but then it came down to them to actually time it right, bring it up in the right angle to get it approved.
The sandwich between their big success stories for the quarter.
Yeah, exactly.
Also, Arrowhead needs a couple more $1 million.
Yeah,
don't worry,
exactly.
because we also made this much. Yeah. Okay, yeah. So let's talk about, because I'm keen to dive into some. Obviously, you've had a bunch of challenges with a ton of fantastic lessons that we can extract out for our listeners here. But I want to spend a little bit of time talking about some of the big victories on the project as well. Like it's a huge project, as you said, a very ambitious thing. You're a small indie team that's making the leap into AAA. And had immense success doing so. But even the fidelity of the game, like you were saying, the visual fidelity was something the PlayStation were, initially talking about. Like, what could we do with this license? Can it reach a new market if we increase the fidelity of, the visuals that Arrowhead can do? And I mean, you delivered on it as well. So I'm sure, whether it's visuals, whether it's design, do you remember some big moments, like some watershed moments during development that were like big success stories for you, that sort of, like rallied the Super Earth soldiers,
I think the one that everybody at the studio remembers is, it was early days still, and we were struggling a little bit with, we were, as I said, like in prototyping and in production at the same time. And then it was part of one of those, like, the game is coming to a close, but we're not ready at all. And I can't remember how it came about, but Shuei Yoshida-san was coming over to the studio because he was like, what is going on over there? And we really needed to put together a build that succinctly presented what Helldivers in a third-person perspective was. And Yoshida-san is an interesting person, and I think almost like a kindred spirit. Every time we sent a deck, to him. He was like, "Send me a build so I can try playing the game instead."
Oh man, that's so Shu. Yeah.
Yeah, he's one of a kind in the games industry.
Yeah. I completely
To some
agree.
degree, especially given his seniority and his sort of level. He just wants to play games and he wants to have fun playing games.
Mm-hmm.
So he was traveling over to Stockholm to just meet us, talk about the game, but also primarily play the game. And I think that moment where instead of caring about what we were supposed to deliver according to a milestone agreement, we had the singular goal of let's ensure that the game plays as well as we know that it can occasionally. Let's get that. Let's increase the probability of that happening when Shu gets here and plays the game together with us. So the singular goal that had a purpose, a meaning, rather than a couple of lines written in a contract,
Mm-hmm.
that became like a rallying cry or a rallying point for the studio. And I think that was one of the moments where we were able to level up, like the visuals of the game, the gameplay in general came together, the sort of the world generation, everything before that was a little bit, janky, broken, it was crashing and it was doing all kinds of things. But because we knew sort of how hard Shu can be, because he just wants to play a really, really good game.
Yeah.
He
notoriously honest with his feedback.
Exactly. We presented him with like a build that was, we all work. It's a combination of, wanting to do right by the money that they PlayStation invested, but also not wanting to get scolded in front of everybody from Shu Yoshida, who's a legend, right? Like
Yeah.
I grew up. I knew who Shu was before I properly got into the games industry, of him being like this titan.
Yeah.
So we produced this build, and it was actually a pretty great experience. And people to this day talk about the Shu build. So the title of that build was Shu build.
Shu build. That's awesome. And I assume he liked it. He was happy with what was going on over there.
He was absolutely. I mean, of course he had feedback, but it wasn't,
Naturally.
like the horror stories of, developers standing there with hat in hand and going like, "Oh yeah, sorry."
Sorry, Yoshida-san. Yeah.
Yeah, he was like, yeah, it's a diamond in the rough.
Yeah, great.
It was a special feeling at the studio at that time, and we weren't that big.
Imagine.
I think we were like 40, 50, maybe somewhere around those lines.
You're saying you're a couple of years in at this point in time?
Yeah, I think it was 3 years in, 3 years in.
Yeah. So
we extended the project once.
Let's talk about, maybe we can zoom out to, because 7 years, 11 months, and 26 days. I'm getting that right, aren't I?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So because it's almost, there are game developers out there, except for the Caves of Card devs who spent 17 years making their game. But there are game developers out there who won't even know what that looks like. And we've spoken a little bit about it being in this closing period, but can we maybe zoom out and can you give everyone kind of like a bird's eye view overview of like that time and how it was sort of broken up, or how you would define the different sort of areas of development? Like, because you scaled from, like these jamming these two teams together of being like almost 40 people up to, how many were you when you shipped?
130 or 120.
Yeah, which is like a huge achievement in and of itself, like logistically and organizationally for a company to do that. So yeah, can you give us like an overview of like, just that sort of those 7 years, 11 months, like to get people's heads around what it kind of looked like? Could you put it into different eras, or was it just kind of like we worked for 2.5 years and then the last 6 months just went for the next 5 years?
Yeah, it's more towards the latter, actually.
Yeah, okay, more people.
Yeah, no, but so the way that I like to think about it is like, imagine the time difference between when you were 10 years old and when you turned 18.
Yeah.
Working on one thing, day in, day out, wanting to make it big, and putting everything that you have in that.
Yeah.
We've, as a studio, had a lot of issues. Not only from like people at the studio, because it's a strange relationship when you own a business and when you're the founders and you've made something successful. So the studio had value before, but especially for the founders, we were sort of chained together with Helldivers. People at the studio could, of course, leave, get a new job somewhere else if they didn't care for working on a game that long. But we, as the founders, we had a really hard time. I mean, we couldn't do that. In that case, we would be abandoning sort of the legacy that we were trying to build.
Yeah, exactly.
So
the responsibility to everyone there.
Exactly. So I fondly, I say jokingly, but remember myself waking up, lying in bed, just staring at the ceiling, thinking like, "Is this?" It feels like I'm in prison from developing this game, because we're so far into development that I can't remember the beginning, and I can't see an end to it either. It feels perpetual.
Yeah, and
even
on a 2-year project, that kind of valley of death, as I call it, in between, right before your alpha starts coming together, you've got your high level concept, and you're waiting for it to all sort of coalesce and show you that this mad idea that you have is going to work out. That even exists in a 2-year project, right? But like, I can't even imagine being 2 years into that, just in the valley of death continuously, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, there were phases to Helldivers, absolutely. Like it was the optimistic settler days where we were breaking new ground for the first 2 years or first 1.5 years, and after that it was the production slog, where it's just about building, and then after some time it was like it's almost as if you've ever had if you've ever been lost, like on a hike and going like, where even are we? And it's that feeling of like, I really can't find my way back.
Yeah.
And it's like wandering around this sort of like, you start second guessing yourself. You can't see what kind of game you're making. Like 6 years in, like it's impossible. You don't know if any of the decisions that you've made are the right ones. And you start getting to the point where when you look at the game, you can't tell like the things that people would tell you immediately, like these are the great things about this game. You don't even know that they exist. They're just there. You lived with them so long.
Yeah, you've lost perspective.
Yeah, completely lost perspective. And then towards the end, like when things are actually coming together, and you're actually going through the finalization phases for real, you're filled with so much self-doubt, not only as people, but as an organization, that anything will ever come out of this. I think morale at the studio was sort of at its absolute lowest the 7th of February 2024.
Wow.
And then on the 8th, we released the game to massive success. It's like the spirit on the day before launch was not that one of excitement and like, I wonder how, that sort of buzz that you have when you release a game. It was one of like almost relief that we were finally getting let go.
Yeah, your prison term was up, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, but you must have had. I remember talking to Maria, right, your CPO, about how much the testers love the game, right? Like PlayStation's testers talking to her about like, this is the best game I've ever tested. Like I'm obsessed with this game, right? There must have been some kind of signs that you were onto something, or was it a complete surprise?
But you've lost perspective to the degree where you don't trust anybody. Like you don't believe it.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're like, they're saying that to kind of make us get to the end, or being kind, or they could see. It's kind of like that. I mean, funnily, there's a meme floating around in the Helldivers community of like fighting on the bug front is throwing grenades and being Rico in Star Troopers. Fighting on the bot front is like being this traumatized Vietnam soldier. And it's that kind of like, ironically, that kind of meme is exactly with the feeling towards the back end of development. And of course, like we had new developers coming in, but unfortunately they quickly got sucked into like the aura at the studio of like, we're burning the midnight oil. It's like it's the bottom of the barrel, kind of like picking crumbs of energy up to get us through to the next day, to the next whatever it might be.
How do you in those moments as a leader, Johan, like you said, right, you need to show up every day because all of these people depend on you. Adam Orth interviewed John Johannes, game director, on Hi-Fi Rush, and he spoke about, stepping onto the project, and, he wasn't a founder at the studio, but, every day getting up and like going, almost feeling like he didn't want to go into the studio, even though he had this fantastic opportunity because of the weight of the responsibility and everything, right? So as a leader, you're showing up. As a founder, you can't leave. How did you, and you're talking about the morale of new people coming in, what do you do as a leader in that point in time? Were you conscious of the, like, people looking to you for the morale, and what to do, how to feel about the project? How do you have resilience as a leader in these moments where you're kind of in that prison and you've still got to lead this team and there are new people onboarding onto the team? Yeah. Do you remember being in a space where you're able to consciously do that, or did you kind of just put your shoes on and go to work every day? And
I mean, some of the days I couldn't go to work because I was just frozen in panic, anxiety, staring at the ceiling.
Yeah, wow.
But I think it's one of the things that's special about Arrowhead is sort of the honesty, and we're in it together. Like, we go down with a boat, sort of attitude within the studio. Like, we really care about making a game that other people will enjoy. And I think it's that kind of like, even though the going was tough, we never sort of lost track of creating an enjoyable game experience for other people. And that was what pushed us through like the toughest days, was the collective sort of commitment to creating something wonderful, something that players hadn't played before. And I wouldn't say that it's to get the approval of others, but it's that kind of like, this is our moment and we're in it together no matter what happens. And I think it became so clear after launch. Like, I was talking to, we had so many server issues after launch, and I was sitting up one night on Discord with our backend lead, Tim, and our server capacity, there were 900,000 people trying to get in, but our servers could only hack 150,000 originally. But at that point, we had managed to increase server capacity and like optimize the backend so that maybe 400,000 were able to get in. And Tim was sitting there and convincing me that we should go for broke and try to get a few more in, because his perspective was that 50 people are still 50 people. Like, if we could get 100 people more in, it would be the entire size of the studio, more people that could get in. And it was individuals that would be able to get into the game. And most of the time, I'm in that position saying like, well, we have to do this because think of the gamers at the end. Like, sure, this is us going to the office, working on this game. But in the end, think about like the joy that we'll be able to spread. People that are like dads that are going to be able to play with their daughter or son, friend groups that are going to be able to enjoy this together and forge stronger bonds of friendship. And for me to be in that situation after launch, where he was telling me that no, we have to get more people in, was such a it's a testament to sort of the character of the people at Arrowhead, of how much they care and we care as of the people playing our game.
Well, I think it ties into something, and it's a wonderful answer, and I think it ties into something that I've seen with Arrowhead and even Helldivers too, right? And they dovetail into each other perfectly, which is you have a very, very well articulated vision for your studio and for the game, and it's like, even down to who you make games for, like this definition of connoisseurs and what that means for you. And like even your studio mantras, like a game for everybody is a game for no one. The way in which you, Johan, talk about co-op games and the importance, even the conversations we've had about you using the metric of how much people are laughing in playtests playing together, as opposed to like whether they're actually completing the levels and stuff like that, or how many times they've died from friendly fire, etc. And then it floods its way into Helldivers 2, like with the very, very sincere and easily understandable and grokkable raises and pillars that you had for that game as well. And so I can understand how this team of 140 people or 100 people at the height of production, right, are in Death Valley, marching along day after day with almost no sign of the end. But there's that North Star, not only for the studio and how they should act, but for what the game is at its heart. So when you say, no, the studios, we're here for the game and for the players, then they can fall back on, okay, well, what is the game? Well, we know that too. And they can march through those woods alone. It sounds like, that's the answer to the question that you're sort of giving here, right? Is like, would you say that? Would you agree that it's those principles sort of helped steer people in how they act and how they see things every day?
Yeah, mostly yes. I mean, compassion when it comes to making video games is always at its heart. The toughest times, what really helped us through this long journey of making Helldivers is the playtests where we were, laughing so hard that we couldn't believe what we were playing. Like those moments, like they fueled another week of development or 2 weeks of development.
Yeah, and
they happened quite frequently. And I think one of the strengths is that over time they became more and more and more and more frequent. Yeah. And it made it a little bit easier to continue developing the game, while as on the flip side, the longer development goes on for, the harder it is to continue developing the game. So they sort of canceled each other out, where it's like we got into a little bit of a slump initially, and then the game started getting more and more fun. But we were always a little bit below sort of, going to work, having a great time developing video games. We're always on the we're just behind a little bit.
Yeah.
And to reference back to the previous conversation about pausing development and getting everything right. Mm-hmm. That would have been a sensible thing, so that the morale would be on a net positive.
Yeah.
That would really have helped, because at that point the development would have been fine, even for such a long time, because the game was consistently getting more and more and more fun. Yeah. And we've had so many playtests. So I have so many memories of the various stages of development or of the game being in one format or another. When we first implemented vehicles, the first time we were able to play against the Illuminate, the first time we were able to play against the Automaton, and even like it's, you go from feature to feature, and then you get excited by whatever that is. So I remember the first time I saw one of our engineers having implemented, the crash mechanics for the automaton dropships. It was such a cool moment. So everybody was longing to, get into a game and just blow one of those up as it came flying in with reinforcements.
Hell yeah.
It's those moments, and I think for a lot of people at the studio, like that kind of joy of just playing the game was the fundamental element to push forward a little bit more.
So I'm conscious of time here. In this episode, I could honestly
we can continue talking forever about.
I know, right? Like we could just go and go. And I mean, you and I have had, outside of these podcasts, we have had hours and hours of conversations about the game and your development. I enjoy them immensely. But there is, I think, on the sort of, now that this sort of podcast episode has sort of taken, there's a theme that's been set up here really, which is like the development of Helldivers and the resilience of making it through and the trials and tribulations. But I just want to spend a little bit of time closing out the episode talking about how that looks post-launch, right? Because especially on the back of what you just said, these developers are sitting there day to day working on this stuff, and then one thing comes in and it lightens up your day and keeps you moving. Now, notoriously, as you just mentioned, Helldivers 2 had a huge launch that obviously had some issues because of the huge launch as well, right? So tell me about that whiplash that you got from thinking that, like you say, the morale being at rock bottom a few days before launch, then this astronomical success, and I'm sure even blew Sony's mind, and then how you as a team sort of rallied around after such a long stretch, 7 years, 11 months, 26 days, right? We'll say it again for the people up in the rafters. And now you're actually, in a way, only just getting started into this whole new segment of the game and its development. So talk to me a little bit about how that morale shifted and how the players coming in sort of helped fuel you and keep the team moving forward.
I think it's one of the things that I believe firmly when it comes to game design and making games is that game experiences are great because of the contrast that you have moment to moment. Like going from and I'm not talking about game development here, but the actual game experience.
Games, yeah.
When in Elden Ring or Dark Souls, when you're going into a boss fight, you manage to knock it down to half health. You get hit. You're down. Now you are down to the last sliver, 1 HP, and you're like, I'm gonna fail this miserably. You manage to use some the flask or whatever to get back, and then you get knocked back, and it's like, I'm actually gonna lose this. It went really well in the beginning. Now it's going horribly, and then you finally beat the boss. Through some kind of magic. It's that kind of narrative, and the interesting part is the delta between the highs and the lows. The bigger they are, the more memorable the experience is going to be. And I think there's no starker difference than between the 7th and 8th of February 2024 in studio morale. So team was, we were relieved that we were finally done with the game and that it was going to ship. The indications that we had was, forecasts based on previous data from other comparable titles, and we didn't have any comparable titles. So the best thing that we could get was some kind of a rough number of maybe we'll sell a couple of million units. Still good for a game, but nowhere near the success that we had. And we knew server capacity, CCU wise, we could handle 150,000 people. And the backend team were so wise as to set up on one monitor in the office or one TV in the office. We had the tracking of how many players were playing the game or were actually logged in. And on the other one, we had live streams from people actually trying out the game for the first time. And the graph of people playing, we originally thought it was bugged because it just kept going up at such an amazing rate. First it was 10,000, 15,000, 20, 30, 50. 90, 120, 200, and it's like, and he just kept going, and it's like, what is happening? Like, and everybody was just there in disbelief. It's like, is this bugged? Is there something wrong with this? And it's like, no, these are actual numbers. And just the fact that we were able to see it in real time. And then eventually it hit, like, I mean, the servers were meant to handle 150,000. I think around 240,000. The player count just dropped like a rock. And it's like, and we had, it was a release party. So we had hired a band to play at the office, like we had snacks and everything like that. And as soon as the player numbers, they just plummeted to zero. It's like, this is not good.
Yeah.
And we immediately just like, it was this moment of like, 5 minutes of disbelief of like, what is this? And then, it started oscillating, bumping, jumping, this number. And it's like, the servers are actually crashing. How many people can play? And then, somebody on the other screen were watching like live streams. As soon as you're in the game, it's fine. But then we started looking at, Reddit or whatnot, and people were like, I can't get in. And, all the memes of like, let me in. I want to just play Helldivers. And it's like, oh shit, we got to do something. It was an interesting and hectic time of like everybody just scuttling off to their computers. Everybody forgot to party to celebrate release. And then we had this sort of a combination of ecstatic enthusiasm of how well we were doing, coupled with how could we have been so wrong in estimating how well liked this game would be.
Yeah. Do you have any idea about that? Do you have any idea why it blew up to the degree that it blew up? Sometimes this happens and you can point to like it getting picked up by streamers in some particular way, or like some, like, I don't know, the game's just fucking rules or something like that. Do you have any idea why it blew up to such a multiple of what you expected?
I think it's the same mechanism as to why Valheim blew up.
Yeah.
I think it's partially released at the right time. Like Valheim came out just when people needed to do things at the height of the pandemic.
Yeah.
Build a Viking village together.
Yeah.
And, be in this fantastical land and just escape reality. Helldivers, I think, had that element of creating unity in the community. There were no toxicity necessarily. I mean, of course there's some, but mostly the Helldivers community is super nice. Everybody's fighting on the same team. Everybody's fighting for a common goal, and we set our differences aside for the common goal. And I really think that time period, and it still goes on to this day, people need more unity than ever. And I think Helldivers really resonate with that. Like, you can leave the real world behind and fight for this totalitarian state. And even though that sounds great, but the sense of camaraderie within the community is real. Like, and I really think that resonated so well with the community. Like, we are all in this together. That coupled as well with, Helldivers is a gamer's game. It doesn't try to be pretentious about what it does. It doesn't try to hand you moral cookies or do anything like that. It's just play the game, shoot some bugs, have fun. There's depth. There's lots of depth, and there's a true interaction between the people that are playing, and we give the players the responsibility of behaving in the game or not. The guardrails, the safety rails are, what's called, the guardrails are
removed.
Yeah. And I really think that just resonates with players because, they're treated like adults and people that can be responsible for their own game experience. So I think it is those two things, like the unity of the community, and then the game not trying to do anything but spread joy.
Yeah, it really is one of those games that just like lights up the room when you're playing it together on the couch, or you can hear your headset blowing up when you're playing online.
Yeah.
It's something truly phenomenal. To close us out, do you have any memories from the community, things happening, like the classic with game developers is folks playing your game in a way that you never expected, or something? Do you have any like stories from the community in those early days, or when people started getting into the game, that kind of blew you and the team away, or personal faves of yours?
I mean,
there's cool moments.
Too many to mention, actually. Like, I mean, we have a channel that's called Helldivers 2 Hype.
Yeah.
On Slack, where people just drop things. That channel was filled to the brim. Like, it was a post every 5th minute of somebody doing something crazy in Helldivers. Or just something crazy happening in Helldivers, where it's like absolute cinema. And but I think really it's a way of looking at game development, where we just put systems together most of the time. I mean, we do ensure that there's an interaction between those systems, but we try to be as agnostic to the outcome as possible. We don't want to design a puzzle that players have to solve, figure out what the designer wanted. Instead, we try to just build systems that will interact naturally, basically a simulator. And then we see the results and the variety of play that comes from that. And I think that's one of the pivotal things about Helldivers, is that you can play it, and I'm still surprised playing Helldivers, and I played the game for like 6,000-7,000 hours.
Yeah.
And when I get into a game, something new happens. I mean, it might just be a variation of what happened before, but there's the systems interact in such a way to create a multitude of outcomes that are unexpected. And it's one of the reasons why Helldivers is different to a lot of the previous horde shooters or PvE games that have come out. Because they have a tendency to be a little bit more formulaic in, you have to do this and then you have to do this. Whereas Helldivers is just this controlled / uncontrolled chaos, where things just emerge, moments emerge, and people can try doing really, really ridiculously cool things, or fail doing so, and it turns into hilarious situations. And all of this is sort of based on our days, like the OG old school crew at Arrowhead. Our days are our common collective experiences of playing Dungeons and Dragons, where everybody imagines like a session of Dungeons and Dragons being, Game of Thrones or Lord of the Rings, but it really turns into Monty Python, the quest for the Holy Grail, most of the time.
Yeah, the path from D&D to Monty Python is very short.
Yeah, no, exactly. And it's like, and really that's our entire design philosophy, even though it needs to be broken down on how they actually achieve those experiences. But really, one thing that we try to build is that we try to build the game into becoming, the replacement for the game master in a D&D session. And then ironically, we have a game master on top of that. But yeah, it's allowing people the freedom to do what they want and then to surprise themselves.
I love it. Well, I think you've been, I don't know if you need me to tell you, you've been very successful in achieving that. So congratulations on all of your success, Johan, commercially, critically, culturally, with this phenomenal title. And of course, congratulations on your 2025 DICE Award for Action Game of the Year. Very important.
Oh, thank you so much. It was a big one, especially given that dinner. Like, it was one of the low points in my career, or maybe high points as well. But it feels good to come back 8 years, 9 years, maybe even later, and actually get that in the bag.
I'm happy for you. And look, I think it's really important as well for folks to hear that you're not in this prison anymore of your own making, that you are on sabbatical. So thanks for chatting to us. What have you been up to on your sabbatical? Am I looking at miniature paints behind you?
Absolutely. So buying some original Warhammer art, painting miniatures. It's like just recollecting myself after this this sort of marathon. It's a marathon ran at sprint speed.
Yeah. Which is almost universally advised against in every sport.
Yeah, no, it's like save your energy.
Yeah.
So you know what? I've been painting Warhammer miniatures. I've been playing video games. I've been hanging out with friends, playing video games, board games, and whatnot.
Love it.
You know, it's same person, and trying to figure out who I were before we got into this crazy ride, so I can sort of get the same kind of energy, excitement to start the next thing that Arrowhead is doing. Yeah, I mean,
very wise.
I just want to make video games, and I want to spread that joy of playing video games together with other people.
Well, we want you to make video games too, Johan. So we fully support your painting of your sabbatical to paint some miniatures and hang out with your friends. Thanks for joining us tonight. And also, of course, at the DICE Summit in Las Vegas earlier in the year. I much appreciate chatting to you as always, my friend.
Thank you so much. No, it's been great. As we said several times, we could probably talk for another 4 hours, 5 hours.
Well, we'll see what the people say. Maybe they'll want more of it.
Yeah. Maybe. And it feels like we have scratched the surface. That's the craziest thing. Like, there's so many more moments of, like, you know, game development philosophy, like production. There's so much to unpack. Then again,
we've already spoken to Maria as well, so we've covered some of that side too. So areas we could have dove into a bunch, but I think as well it's worth telling folks. Johan, I worked with Johan for quite a bit of time. On his, obviously he did the bulk of the work. I was just there going, yes, great. But on his GDC talk that just went down, and it's phenomenal. I was there at GDC. I saw it, capturing lightning in a bottle. So I'm sure it'll hit the GDC Vault or be online on YouTube at some point in time in the future. Perhaps when this episode is out, who knows? So I highly, highly recommend catching that if you want to dive in, if you want to get more into the design and philosophy behind Helldivers and sort of how it came about, and a lot of the sort of the pillars of the game and the razors that you used and some really concrete examples there. It's a phenomenal talk, Johan.
Thank you. And yeah, it's a pleasure being on. Like, thank you so much, Trent.
Of course, man. Happy to have you. Thank you.
Thank you.